Okay. Introduce us, Ben. Go for it.
I think we're live, and I haven't switched off the audio for the live feed, so it's probably going to come through in a minute. So I'm just talking while I'm waiting for the video to start.
Sure.
But anyway, Josh approached me on Twitter and asked to do a hangout to talk about men's issues. So do you want to tell us a bit about yourself and
Sure.
what you're interested in finding out?
So my background, if we go back a bit, is very left, very I used to consider myself something of a feminist. I used to consider no one to get too angry. Let the story continue before you start hating me. And like I was saying earlier, just in the pre-hangout bit, I came so close to being an SJW, it's not even funny. And I still have a bit more sympathy with them, I think, because I was almost there. And I started getting interested in some more skeptic, if you want to use the term, for that whole side of YouTube, skeptic videos. And, they sort of started to win me over and make me reconsider a lot of things. And now where I'm at, I would call myself something of a centrist. I can kind of try and see the merits of both sides. And I think the most important thing for me is trying to do something about health rather than just trying to win it. We've got to actually say, well, look, we're both pretty entrenched and we're both pretty, what's the word? We're both going to last. Like the whole skeptic side, that's going to last. The whole feminist side, that's going to be around for decades probably, if, who knows how long, but, and we've got to try and work out how to work together. And that's one of my key interests. That said, specifically on men's issues, I'm getting more interested. I've been hearing bits and pieces. I watched some Karen Strawn and a few other things. Don't agree with everything. Not sure about everything, but it's good to get educated. And you seem like a good guy to talk to in order to get educated, as some people would like to say. I remember shoemaking. Sorry.
You should go into this with an open mind, so it's good. I mean, I don't think anyone really, when they're first exposed to stuff, really believes it all. I think it takes a while to sink in. And I don't think we all agree with each other on everything either. But there are some, I guess, overarching principles. I think the main difference between most feminists and most MRAs is we have a very different worldview. Feminists see the world we live in as male-dominated and patriarchal, whereas MRAs see something different called gynocentrism, where women tend...
Yeah, I've heard the term.
Yeah, where women tend to be... women's needs tend to be put first. And you can see that with things like the sentencing gap, with homelessness, where... in various places around the Western world, females who are homeless get preferential treatment, even though they're the minority. You see that in domestic violence shelters and things like that. Services tend to be... Yeah, go on.
Sorry, yeah, no, that's all very good. Can I just... Oh, no, on the one hand, I would like you to continue. On the other hand, I feel like I should make my little centrist attempt at redeeming the other side by just saying, I think... if we want to talk about, say, the patriarchy model, for example, which is not a model I tend to agree with, but what I think it is doing is trying to address something bigger almost, which is what I like to call gender dynamics. And it's trying to say, look, we have all these big structures and expectations and inbuilt ways that we've made society that create all these problems for everyone. Again, feminists, they make it all about men doing harm to women. To me, it's like, what do men do to men? What do women do to women? What do men do to women? And what do women do to men? There's 4 directions as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I would agree 100%.
Yeah, but again, the MRAs, they get really deep into their gynocentrism. The feminists, they get really deep into their patriarchy, and they actively look for stuff to reinforce this worldview, and they stop seeing the bigger picture as I like to try and see it. At least that's hopefully not me trying to sound too arrogant, but hey, it happens.
No, I think gynocentrism is a thing. I think it's a natural thing for men to protect women and women to look after women. There was, I can't remember
just
what
ask
university.
about any men.
Sorry?
Ask any man, and they will. If you ask any man, most of them will tell you, gun to their head, they do feel more protective and concerned about women than men.
Yeah, and a lot of men will throw other men under the bus.
That's one of the issues. It varies from thing to thing. Like I'll bet you that in a casual social environment, a guy can favor another guy over a woman, and the woman might walk away saying, "Oh, patriarchy, patriarchy." But it's entirely possible that in an emergency situation, the guy would throw the other guy under the bus and save the woman. I think that's a bit how it can go.
Yeah,
can I put forward and say that you said that you wanted to sort of be centrist and give the other perspective. I mean, I can't speak for Bain or Omegon specifically, but I think generally there are a lot of left-leaning people in the anti-feminist community. We're not all Republicans. We're not all conservatives. There's
of course,
and anarchists and stuff. And I've always been left-leaning, and I'm still left-leaning. I still prefer the left. I'm trying to clean it up. I'm trying to get rid of the cancerous aspects of it before it falls apart and leads to just a complete monopoly for the right wing.
You're totally right, because the whole political spectrum and structure is just fracturing and fracturing and fracturing. It's getting so complicated.
Well, the Americans are voting tomorrow, and
yeah.
I have to wonder how many people will turn out, and I'm guessing it will only be the diehard fans of each party.
I have no idea. I would have to ask, because I'll bet you it's turning every which way. I did hear one person who I'm guessing is an expert say that actually it's not going to come down so much to like swing voters as it is going to come down to like how well each party does a good job of bringing out their base. Anyway, sorry, I don't want to get too sidetracked with American politics because it gets way too much attention.
Yeah, I think the world's going to lose either way, no matter what results happen today. NC Clark pointed out that it's today and not tomorrow. There's a few time zones. It's probably like 3 a.m. or something there. I'm not sure. But technically, it's today. Thank you, NC.
Should we just take a quick... Sorry.
Basically, we're going to end up... basically, we're going to end up with a power-mad fascist who wants to run the world like it's a monopoly board, or Donald Trump.
Yeah, I don't know. See, look, this is going to get me a lot of shit, and don't think that I'm enthusiastic. I slightly favor Hillary, slightly. I don't think we should dogpile on people who don't share our beliefs with regard to politics, because
I was being facetious in terms of when I was talking about a fascist who wants to run the world like a monopoly board.
You really did mean Trump, didn't you?
I was deliberately making people think of Trump. It was a switch. It was just a joke.
Yeah. Well,
I hate them both.
But I mean, you're not wrong though that Hillary does really. She's so entrenched in the system. The biggest problem with Hillary is that you can't expect any meaningful change from her. She's at best a placeholder, and we can only hope she doesn't, give more tax cuts to the rich or something, because even the left wing seems to do that these days.
But it'll be interesting if she does get in. Just the number of Clintons and Bushes who have been in that seat in the last 30 years.
I said that there's been, in the last 5 presidencies, there's been Bush, Clinton, and this is supposed to be the world's greatest democracy.
It's bloody dynasties, isn't it? It feels like you know,
it's
16th
the
century
War of the Roses all over again.
But anyway, we've got a bit sidetracked with the American circus.
Should we? Yeah. Now, well, the chat is going there, so let's try and steer a bit better. It wasn't going to happen. We were going to talk about the election.
What is your channel?
My channel?
Yeah. If I type in Joshua to YouTube, I get 1 million results. What's your channel?
Okay, my channel is just my name, Joshua Soderlind, Soderlind. All you will see is a whole bunch of me playing piano and a single video about a sort of men's issues group that sort of started up, which I quite like and seems to be going well, and I'm contributing to a bit. This is almost coming out as a consequence of me getting interested through that group.
Okay, is that local?
No, it's an online group.
Oh,
Do you
okay.
remember? I might try and sell it to you, actually. You know, a little bit. We'll see. But do you remember Chrisiosity's question in the whole reasonable questions for anti-SJWs?
Yep.
Now, I didn't see your response, so I don't know whether you've already committed to any position on it. But basically, I thought the question was the absolute standout of that set. You know, a lot of the other ones, it was kind of easy to see.
About talking to her about these issues.
Well, about sort of trying to bridge the divide between the two sides in order to address men's issues.
Yeah. I think my response said something along the lines of, "I'm happy to do it, and I've been doing it for ages, really."
Yeah. No, look, fair enough. Okay, that's a great response. You know, a lot of the responses I saw were sort of umming and ahhing and not really very.
I think I also mentioned that if you don't deal with men's issues, blaming it on the patriarchy probably isn't the best way to go about it, and that's something I often hear too.
Well, believe it or not, the group has done a pretty good, like the feminists in the group, which probably contains, you know, a couple people you might not like at all, but, you know, we'll see. But everyone is doing a reasonably good job of avoiding, you know, worthless controversy and arguments. And the vast majority of it is basically just working together on making videos on men's issues on a bipartisan, with a bipartisan sort of.
They're making videos
angle.
on men's issues. That's interesting.
Yeah. So, I mean, my video was introducing the group. I'm also contributing to a video on abuse. So abuse, and then it's a bit more sort of targeted at men, you know, using examples more of men being abused rather than sort of genderless. But it's trying to be even-handed. It's not too... I think the advantage...
It sounds like something I'm working on at the moment. The first part's already been put up. The men's issues matter.
Yeah. No, and that I quite liked, and I think, you know, all we can do is all contribute. And look, so many people cover the same ground on YouTube. There's no getting away from it, but it reaches more people if many people are covering the same ground. So why not?
Yeah. I started the concept for that back in early September. So I've been working with a group of people on that since. So hopefully,
there was Bene and who else?
Little Miss Anonymous and Falfop. And
I feel like
part 2 is going to drop hopefully on the 19th of this month if we get it done in time, which we should.
I feel like we're not including Mr. Silhouette enough. I feel like my inner SJW requires more representation.
Of shadows.
What? Of 2D shapes?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we need more. For some reason, you know what just popped into my head is that bit in The Simpsons where Skinner is leaving the house and his mother is like, Skinner, Seymour, we gotta do silhouette night and shit like that. I don't know. That's a weird one.
Well, thank you for including me.
I now associate you with Skinner's mom harassing her son.
Well, Seymour? Yeah, I do love Skinner's non-biological mother. But yeah, my opinion is that with regards to the Against All Odds group that Chrissy Osti and several others have set up, it's a very good it's a very good idea. It's a very good motive, and I hope that it works out. It's yet to sort of produce the fruits that it hopes for, and I certainly have my fingers crossed. I invited Chrissy Osti onto a show that I did a week ago. I'm well aware, of what she's trying to do. I think basically what we recognize is that for a lot of the reasonable feminists out there, like say Ranting Feminist or Chrissy Osti or Philip Moriarty, is that they have good hearts and that they do mean when they say that they are trying to make the world a better place. They certainly believe that what they're doing is. And
absolutely,
we simply disagree about how to fix the problems that the world has. We disagree about the exact nature of the problems that the world has, but at least we can recognize the humanity in one another. Whereas, say, someone like Sarkeesian, she's a con artist. She's not interested in fixing problems. She's interested in making money. So it's nice to at least look across to the other side and see people who you respect if you don't agree with.
I think we've got to address this a little bit because the chat is picking up on this. So the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Yes, but can we just I think it's like you were saying, these people do want to improve the world, and maybe we can disagree with them. But they're not starting out from a position, at least starting out from the position of I'm in it for me and I just want to get what I want out of it,
Well, I've been doing this for about 3 or 4 years now, and in that time I've seen a lot of change. When I first started making videos and became part of the community, the response we would get from feminists was men don't have issues, only women have issues. And then over time it shifted to, yes, men have issues, but the only way to deal with those issues is through the feminist model. Which basically is deal with women's issues first, and then once all those issues are dealt with, we'll get around to dealing with the men's issues. And more recently, they've shifted again to, yes, there needs to be a separate group which deals with men's issues, and those issues are important, but not the present-day men's rights movement, because that's full of misogynists. But it's interesting how the argument has shifted, and that's mainly because of people like myself and Karen and even Paul Elam. I know he gets a pretty bad rap, and other MRAs who are basically out there spreading the message and putting out the other side. They've had to basically shift their position.
I think that is a kind of progress. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, definitely. It's definitely progress. And when they shift more towards the middle, I'm happy to meet them there. But not all of them are shifted to the middle. That's the issue.
No. Some people just get more radical.
Yeah, definitely. But I'm more than happy to talk to the ones that are in the middle. I do it on a regular basis.
But and it's important though. I remember making a comment. Maybe it came off as tone policing, but do you remember that comment I made on your video that sparked a bit of a discussion? Well, I was positive about.
I did read it, but I can't remember it word for word. I think you criticized some of the comments in the comment section.
Well, at the time, the comment section was looking pretty dire, and it got a lot better as I checked later. But to me, it's like I want people to just
the fuck feminist type comments. Keep in mind though that video went up just after the feminist blocked the red pill in Melbourne. Yeah, so I think there was a lot of pissed off people right after that caused.
That is a factor, but that's not the only reason, and that's not the only time that you'll see these kinds of comments.
I agree. There's a lot of people out there who are very angry with feminists, and in some cases with good reason. But I did a hangout with Garrett.
Good reason. Even good reason still doesn't negate the fact that I think, well, not the fact that I think, doesn't negate the idea that commenting like this all the time really creates a very bad impression
I
for
agree.
MRM.
I totally agree.
And it's something to just get people to think about. I wasn't trying to like tell people to shut up, and I wasn't trying to tell. I kind of wanted to maybe catch your attention and maybe get you to just say, guys, it probably doesn't help to talk like this. Like, I get it, but it's just a poor tactical move, if nothing else.
Usually my comment section isn't too bad, although it is, YouTube. The interesting thing is, I think it was about 2 months ago or a month and a half ago, something like that. I did a hangout with Garrett, and I looked at the comment section on his video afterwards, and some of the comments there were just unbelievable. So I would put any comment on one of my videos up against them any day, to be honest with you.
Well, actually, when we had our hangout with Chrisiosity and ConjurePoints and a couple of other feminists last week, we got accusations, that like people were saying, you guys, us, Otterface and I, and Satirtician, you guys are idiots. You guys are, you don't do your research. The feminists should have hammered at you harder. Boy, if I'd been there, what I would have done. And one of them went so far as to basically accuse us of living in echo chambers. And it was like, what? We just did a stream with 4 feminists, and you're accusing us of living in an echo chamber? Exactly how far do we need to go before you will consider us listening to the other side?
Yeah, I think I got accused of being the most dangerous type of MRA by someone in the comment section of that Garrett video because I pretend to be reasonable or something like that and talk to the other side. Or it was something. It was 2 months ago.
If only more people at least pretended to be reasonable, how much better would things be? Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it was conspiracy theory level woo, so it was I've been meaning to make a video about it too, but I've been too busy with other projects.
Yeah. So one person says, look, welcome to the internet. Yeah. Again, it might sound like the SJW type of battle, ground that they like, the whole don't bully, don't harass, all that sort of stuff. But I think we can just tell people, it might not be the best idea. Maybe a couple people change their mind and that's improved things, and we're not going to improve things 100%. That's never going to happen, but it's worth doing.
Yeah, look, I don't think, fuck all feminist type comments are really helpful. And
you can even extend that to the broader internet.
Yeah, but let's put things in perspective. Let's say one of my videos has, I don't know, 3,000 views or something, right? And there might be, I don't know, 100 comments if we're lucky. And maybe out of that 100 comments, there's a handful of questionable comments. I don't think that's too bad out of 3,000 views. It's not the majority.
No, and like I said, I came in when the comments was looking more dire than it ended up being in the long run, because I was revisiting the page, answering to everyone. I still think it's interesting. People wanted to sort of justify this hatred rather than just say, maybe it's not a good idea, but I can understand that. It's just something I wanted to put forward.
Yeah, no, look, I agree with you, but I also think it was just after the Red Pill petition, and that really pissed off a lot of people. But you'll note in the video, you'll note in the video I didn't mention feminism once. Well, we didn't mention feminism once. That was on purpose.
The men's rights matter. Sorry, men's issues
matter. I do feel like a little bit of sympathy for the people who say things like "fuck all feminism." I mean, like, I wouldn't accept it if they said "fuck all women," because that's that's a category that people are born into. Whereas feminism is an ideology, and I can understand if people are angry with it, because feminism does go on the attack and say you are a rapist, you are an abuser, you are hateful and misogynistic and violent, and it's not a great sort of thing to hear over and over again and expect people to be calm about it. Like, I don't ever speak that way myself. I don't condone people who do, but I do have a bit of sympathy for them.
I think it's telling, though. Sorry, I think it's telling that we wanted to talk about men's issues, and you said you wanted to avoid the word feminism in your video that you made, but look at us already. We've spent a lot of the time already just talking about feminism.
Yeah, it's hard to
and-
talk about men's issues without talking about feminism, because
Well,
feminists
it's
control
hard to
the
talk about
narrative,
gender. It's
basically.
hard to talk about gender politics without talking about the world's biggest gender policing force.
Yeah.
Of course. And look, I think there is some merit to criticizing feminism, of course. There is also some merit to just avoiding a bit of politics and trying to address issues. Yeah, sure, they can block. I know it happens. But if they see a bit more put forward that is a bit more, shall we say, neutral, again, it can win even more neutral people over and more actual moderate feminists a bit closer to the center. As Bain was saying, there's been progress made in that regard.
I agree with that. As I said, Joshua, I would never do it myself, nor would I condone it. I just have sympathy. Like before.
Even
I used to be a little bit more like you. What I would say, oh come on, there's never reason for things like that. But when you get really deep into it and you see things like people losing their homes, people losing their families, people losing their children, people even losing their livelihoods if they're falsely accused of something, I understand why people are angry, and I do have sympathy for them.
I wrote down quite a number of things that we could end up discussing. I wasn't sure whether we would have other people or it would just be Bain and I. So I want to keep it a little bit. I don't want to run the stream crisis. Bain should run the stream if anyone, but
no, go for it.
I think we can definitely talk about feminism, and we will. It will simply come up. But if we want to get to like some male issues, one thing I don't see talked up very much, which actually concerns me, because for some reason I just resonate with this issue. But if we want to talk about gendered issues, I think prison is a very gendered issue. When you look at the rates of incarceration, the kind of abuse that goes on, and other things.
Well, I often talk about the sentencing gap. I think I'm one of the few people who does.
Yeah, but I mean, there's more to it than just that. And sentencing gap, again, perfectly valid issue to bring up. But what about the massive rates of sexual abuse that happen in prison, and principally in male prisons?
The thing is, every time we bring that up, we get accused of only bringing it up to derail the conversation about female rape victims.
That's
but there are so many male rape victims. It's worth having a conversation about it.
Of course it is. But we get accused of not really caring about it and just using it as a derailing tactic. So they criticize us. They criticize us if we don't bring it up, but when we do bring it up, they criticize us for bringing it up. So, what are we supposed to do exactly to make them happy? I'm not sure.
I've brought it up many times and been given the response, yes, well, but they are criminals, so they're not as important. What about the women on the outside that are getting raped? And as much as no one, not ever, deserves to be raped. I do think that should apply to inmates as well, because what I say to them is they have this idea that every criminal is an awful, awful human being. It's like, what about someone who's in there for tax evasion? What about someone who's in there because they were drunk and disorderly? Yeah, exactly. What if they were in there because they were falsely accused? And if you're going to say,
not everyone's a murderer.
If you're going to say that rape is okay because it's happening to criminals in that, or at least it's not as important, why not go so far? If you're going to be coy about it, why not at least own up to what you're saying? Go so far as to say, okay, I sentence you to 5 years and 40 rapes. Like,
yeah, I mean,
why don't we start? Why don't we actually start?
To make a point just like that.
Why don't we start giving out rape as a punishment? If we're going to let it happen, why don't we own up to it? Turning a blind eye or owning up to it, ultimately it's the same thing. It's going to happen either way. If we're not prepared to stop it, we might as well endorse it. So yeah, 40 rapes, 20 rapes, you just stole something, that's only 5 rapes. Hopefully you'll get over it. And more importantly, how, right? If you don't want to care about the criminals, at least care about the fact that when that person who is doing the raping gets out of prison, they're going to be far from rehabilitated.
Yeah.
Here's an interesting thing. Earlier this year, there was a bit of controversy over Roosh v. And I'm no fan of Rushvi, as anyone who's watched my videos will know. Yeah, I really dislike the guy. But he wanted to do some pickup artist meetup around the world, which I don't think he ever planned to actually have happen. I think it was just a thing to stir up the online media and get publicity, which is exactly what happened. And a lot of the media were reporting, of course, that he was a typical MRA or an MRA leader, which was absolute bullshit. But they all jumped on the thing that he wrote that article, that clickbait article that rape should be legalized on private property, in which he actually said in the article that he didn't believe that should happen. But, stupid article anyway.
He was conducting some dumb sort of thought experiment.
Yeah, it was a really bad article, and I wish he hadn't written it. But it's not exactly what the social justice warriors report. But the thing is, when he was asking for this meetup, I saw a lot of response videos on YouTube, and some of them were so offended that he was having this rape meetup, as they referred to it, that they wished that he would be arrested and sent to jail so he could be raped, which I just thought incredibly ironic.
Which brings us neatly to the topic of dehumanizing your opposition.
Can I just say anecdotally, I was watching a video about Star Wars: The Force Awakens, and they were discussing how apparently some boycott had happened because they thought the film was too feministy. And the headline was MRAs boycott Star Wars, and then the subtitle was website Return of King advertises boycotting Star Wars. I was like, they don't do any research whatsoever.
I saw an article on The Guardian that the headline was MRAs boycott new Star Wars movie, and it went on to say that there was all these MRAs on Twitter who were boycotting Star Wars, and it had a link for a citation. And when you clicked on the link to the citation, it went to another article from The Guardian, which talked about Twitter trolls and did not mention MRAs once. So the journalist who wrote the second article just assumed that if someone is a troll on Twitter, they must be an MRA, and then use that as the headline. And this is what passes as journalism these days.
To be honest, I have experienced quite a bit of trolling, like MRA type people who are not, or when I say MRA type people, I'm probably making some assumptions in some cases, but in some cases they pretty clearly are. But they have been the source of more of the pointless bickering and more of the just downright unproductive nonsense than the other side. It does exist, the phenomenon of MRA.
That really depends on what topic you're discussing. As in, I'm not going to deny that there are plenty of people who refer themselves as men's rights activists that don't really do any activism and are kind of just hanging on in a bit of a useless way. You know, they grumble and moan and say a few nasty words that get a lot of feminist attention, but they don't actually do any activism.
Are they MRAs then, or are they just anti-feminists who are using?
That's what I mean.
The MRA argument because it's convenient at the time.
They call themselves
Scotsman thing with Ophelia, which I watched just a bit of. If they call themselves MRAs, it doesn't matter. We still have a problem.
Oh yeah, if they call themselves MRAs,
I was just going to say, in response to you saying that MRAs tend to be the ones who make, useless, unhelpful, pejorative comments. I would say that really, really depends on what the topic was, because if you are writing something SJW, then sure. But if you're writing something that is pro-men, you're going to get a lot of complaints from feminists.
Of course. Look, I'm not saying neither side exists, but I've been experiencing it more lately. Like in the group, we've had a couple of people who will come in and just not help. I don't want to go into it too much, but look, the worst thing a feminist has done is when one of these guys was sort of going off and being a pain in the ass, a feminist sort of brought up a couple of topics they shouldn't have. But that was kind of the worst I've seen from a feminist within this group. And yeah, it's a very small subset, obviously. But I think it's a legitimate issue the MRA sort of trolling mentality, if you will, like, again, not 100%, not all hashtag, not all MRAs, but it's an issue for MRAs as even more than it's an issue for feminism, because feminists are getting harassed and getting polarized, and that's creating problems, and MRAs are going around, you know, debasing their own movement, essentially.
Look, I don't doubt there are some MRAs who do that, but at the same time, I think the vast majority of people who are classed as MRAs have absolutely nothing to do with the movement, especially in the media.
You guys get so much shit hurled at you that you don't deserve. That's not you.
Yeah, I know. It's Roosh V and Elliot Roger and anyone on the internet who's a troll, apparently. I've even heard TERFs refer to mainstream feminists who are anti-MRAs as men's rights activists because they're pro-trans rights. Meanwhile, those same mainstream feminists are referring to MRAs as being anti-trans. It's mind-boggling the way this shit works sometimes.
Yeah. Again, we look at the mainstream narrative, and I mean, we can look at YouTube and say, look how many subscribers like Christy Winters or Chrissy Ossity has, and look how many Sargon has, and other people have. But when we look at the mainstream media, we see so much more sympathy and so much more voice given to the whole feminist perspective.
It's interesting you say that, because often you'll just see feminists on talking about feminist issues with no counter voice. But whenever they have an MRA on, which is rare, they will have at least one or two feminists on as well.
Yeah.
As a counter.
Yeah. They don't. It's sort of it's a journalistic principle, I suppose you could say, that you can't present everything as 50-50. Sometimes you've got to just not sort of legitimize something that's really a bit wacko or whatever. And I guess MRAs are still in that category as far as the media is concerned.
It's slowly starting to shift, though. I've seen more positive creep, shall we say. And even with the red pill recently, there was a thing on Channel 10 with 5 commentators who were saying how terrible it was that the feminists had shut it down. 4 of them were saying that. The 5th one was saying that the movie was terrible and people shouldn't see it, even though she hadn't seen it.
Even though she hadn't seen it, she wanted to tell
No, none of them had seen it. And they're all saying, well, we shouldn't judge the movie until we've seen it, and it's not good to silence things. And she was saying, well, I disagree. It's pro-rape. We should get rid of it. And they were saying, well, how do you know it's pro-rape? And she goes, well, I haven't seen it, but it's obviously pro-rape.
Oh,
which it's not.
My argument with the whole thing, like the centerpiece of the anti-Melbourne petition, anti-Red Pill Melbourne petition, was something like, Paul Elam has said some horrible things. And it's like, is that and she tried to emphasize that Paul Elam was like the star or something. Again, not having seen it. But the question then becomes, so if anyone who's a giant douchebag or has said some horrible things appears in a movie, we now have to ban the movie?
Imagine
is that the logic?
It was a movie about Islam being shown at the Kino or wherever. And in that movie, they had 5 minutes of a radical mufti saying something which was offensive, or not saying something offensive, but he has said something offensive before. Would the same people put up a petition to ban that movie?
Again, probably not.
No, I suspect that if the movie was banned, they would be the ones defending it, saying that we should let different opinions be heard.
Otterface in the comments just said something kind of interesting, which is that she said, "Is there actually anybody out there, seriously, anybody out there, that thinks that rape is a good thing? Like even rapists think that rape is a bad thing." I'm actually curious. Is there anybody out there that could look you in the face and say, yes, rape is positive?
We're going to have a ton of comments now endorsing rape just for lols.
But they would be a rarity.
There would be an absolute rarity. They would have such convoluted thinking. They would be justifying probably their own actions.
Feminists say that you're a rape apologist, you're pro-rape. They throw that around so much. But it is genuinely, has there ever been a person that anyone can name or point to that has said categorically, not has said things like, you know, by the way, if you're both drunk, it's not rape. Or by the way, if you regret it in the morning, it's not rape. Oh my God, you're a rape apologist. Like, not that, right? Not the things that are not agreeing with rape.
Well, the interesting thing is...
Can you point me to one person who said at some point, yes, rape, the taking away of someone's consensual sexual activities is a good thing?
Well, the closest thing I can think of is just to be, again, you know, fair to all sides. Paul Elam did say something along the lines of, if I was in a rape trial and I was given the opportunity to acquit the guy, even if the evidence seemed to show that he was not, so that he did it, I would probably still acquit him. He said something like that, right, Ben?
And there's a lot of us who have criticized him over that. But his point was that you can't trust the judicial system if it's set up to benefit one side. Now, I don't fully agree with him, but I do understand his point.
I think he was trying to make a point rather than honestly saying he would acquit a rapist, but he did say that, which is
I agree. And I also think it's a bit clickbaity. Paul has said a couple of times that when he started this, and he's been doing this a lot longer than any of us here, people just ignored men's issues and it got no attention.
They need to do something.
Yeah, so I think for a new movement to get any attention, you maybe have to become a little bit radical.
Bit of a shit starter.
And once people are paying attention, then the more moderates can move into the middle ground. That's my theory anyway.
And that seems like the logical trajectory. That seems where things are heading, and it seems like what we should encourage.
Yeah, well, the suffragette movement, didn't one of them run in front of the horses at a horse race to get attention? Yeah, well, there you go.
Yeah, there were more than a couple publicity stunts to get that whole thing off the ground, I believe. And again, kind of fair enough. I don't know if any of us are going to be arguing against women having the right to vote, or am I mistaken?
Oh, no, I've got no problem with that.
Oh, I have it. Yeah.
What?
First you take it off the woman, then you take it off the blacks, and then the Jews and the gays, okay? I want to build an empire of freedom based on slavery. Okay, somebody stop me.
So Man Boobs is going to quote that now, and he'll probably say that I said it, so well done.
I think...
But you did say it.
Well, there you are.
That's different.
I've been here the whole time. I just had nothing really of value to contribute.
I would like to know...
But what else is new?
You feel you don't want to contribute? Is that because it's disinteresting, or you just generally agree with it? Because that would be nice if you agree with it.
Oh no, I was eating breakfast and had nothing to contribute because my mouth was full.
Oh, fantastic.
What else is new?
Time zones. Shut
Time
up.
zones, indeed.
Cock joke.
Oh, if anyone's an expert on cock, it may as well be you.
I was going to say, I saw a story today where an adult woman got off on a statutory rape charge with, I think, a 13-year-old boy who she got drunk and had sex with. And I think the judge said something like she wasn't fully responsible because she was drunk at the time.
Yeah.
And she got a suspended sentence. So I'm hoping the feminists will make a fuss about that like they did the Brock Turner case.
Well, didn't they let a teacher off because the lawyer argued she was too pretty to go to jail?
Yeah, it sounds legit.
These cases are really interesting because a few years ago, there's more in the UK. We have this. There was a comment in the chat earlier feed that I noticed that kind of got my attention when you were talking about rape. Should the alleged perpetrator retain anonymity? I think it was NC that wrote this. Like the alleged victim.
Yeah, I saw that.
And you have a case in the UK with a footballer, soccer player to some of you, called Ched Evans. Now he served 2.5 years in prison for rape, but it was recently overturned because of bad evidence. But this guy's career is completely wrecked, and the media before, during, and after that case destroyed him. Should he have had any anonymity before any of that happened?
I think for something, basically because nobody wants to touch a rapist, understandably. Nobody wants to touch a rapist whatsoever. So we all take the better safe than sorry route of, well, they were accused, you might as well throw them under the bus just in case. And I think anonymity is the only way to protect a citizen's rights until they are proven to be a rapist. Because let's be honest, the court of public opinion is a lot less charitable than the court of law. The
argument, though, is that other people the rapist may have raped might come forward. I don't agree with that. I think it should be same for both accuser and accused. You should either make both names public or neither.
Yeah, no, I think there's ways to circumnavigate that, like to get in contact with people who are, like in his life, people who may have been sexual partners type thing. I think you can do it without putting it in the newspapers.
Yeah, with the Chet Evans case, there was an additional thing that disgusted me, and I'm not one of the people that trolled the then alleged victim. Is that a GoFundMe was set up to help her because of the harassment, because obviously she's being given a new life, not new life, but new name, new identity, new location, so to speak, to protect her. And it's like, well, she kind of lied. Why isn't she being prosecuted for it? I don't care about her name, but she got a GoFundMe set up to give her money so she could move away. What?
Was this recently, or was this after the rape?
After the appeal and he won, his name was cleared.
So recently, when his name, not after it was proven that he raped her, but after it was proven that he didn't.
After he served a few years in prison, was then released early, and then won the appeal to have his name cleared, which then effectively ruined his football career to begin with. Bear in mind, football players earn a lot of money. He's now earning pennies for another team in a very low league. His career is wrecked. It's not going to be rebuilt. And even some very famous athletes in this country, one's called Jessica Ennis, she was very disparaging about him, and no apology from her.
But you're not looking at it the right way, Omegon. You're not looking at it the right way. So if he was
put my lens on,
if he was found guilty, that would be proof of rape culture, right? But if he's found innocent, then that's also proof of rape culture, because clearly he's guilty anyway, and he just got off with it. So
my apologies. I'll just mute myself now.
Can I bring up? I think this is it's funny, but I think this also leads into a bigger issue that we run into with a lot of, dare I say, SJW stuff, where they want to make very well-intentioned allowances for some kind of minority or some kind of disadvantaged group or person, but the problem then becomes, how do we avoid these allowances being abused? So if we want to make all these, in the case of rape cases, or let's turn it around. Let's say it's workplace discrimination on the basis of race, just to have a different topic than rape for a change. If you were to make laws that made it really easy to abuse this process just to get money, just to get revenge, I got to say, there would be people who would use these laws appropriately, and then there would be people who would use these laws terribly. The question is that I don't think you can ever make an issue so sensitive and so one-sided that it then opens itself up for that sort of loophole abuse or whatever.
Well, something like people getting into university based on race, I think it should be more your economic background.
Yeah, economic background to me is more important than particular race. Again, these things are well-intentioned. I was more talking about legal-based or discrimination, anti-discrimination-based problems that come up when you try and enforce these things.
Can you give us an example?
Well, I mean, the example I just gave was let's say you passed laws that are supposed to prevent, let's say, workplace discrimination on the basis of race. So let's say, if someone is not hired or not promoted and they think it's because of their race,
So you mean like a quota or someone a
maybe not necessarily quota, discrimination. So they can make an accusation of, you discriminated against me. Again, hypothetically, we could make these laws so that they would say, oh, look, the burden of proof is on the employer. There's all these sorts of requirements, and it becomes there's no way to say dismiss the case if a judge finds it groundless. It must be followed through. If you did all these stupid things, it could be abused so easily. And we come up with other laws, like there was the whole furor. I haven't looked into it enough, but the furor around pronouns, that a whole bunch of skeptics got behind that professor. And it's like, again, I don't know the details of this. I want to actually check it maybe. But let's just say not using pronouns gets you a fine or whatever. If you set up the laws a certain way, that could easily be abused. Not to mention the fact I tend to object to it just because I don't think you should force people to address other people the way that they want. I think that's...
But it's something you can do accidentally as well. Like Varmint Coyote, I often bring this up. Varmint Coyote is a trans woman on YouTube who looks exactly like a man. She has a goatee. And because of that, I misgender her all the time because I see a goatee and think man, So it's easy to do.
Yeah, I can kind of understand that. And again, it's like it's just, are we going to set up systems that can easily be abused on the basis of trying to help people we consider discriminated against?
Yeah, I think it's changing societal attitude rather than trying to force it with laws that can be abused. So I mean, I've got no problem with respecting someone's pronouns.
Yeah, like to me, it's like, if I know them and they're decent to me and they make the request and I can see that it matters to them, sure, I'll make an effort to address them as they would like to be addressed. That seems reasonable. But people are going
to make mistakes as well in some cases.
Yeah, of course. And the whole idea of there's this secondary damage that gets done because, let's say, I mean, I'm sure that there is like genuine hate and discrimination against trans people on a certain basis, but to go around and start enforcing pronouns is probably only going to make matters worse.
Yeah, I think there's bigger issues than that, to be honest.
Yeah, like I remember someone was talking about in the course of all this, they were talking about all these issues that trans people face, like to do with housing and what have you. Now, I'm not sure how valid these are or not. I just have not done the research. There could be let's say there is. Why not bring that up as opposed to pronouns? And then use pronouns to try and say, okay, we're going to address housing by addressing pronouns? I
agree 100%. Like you said, a lot of these things have good intentions, but they just go too far. There was a university in America a couple of years ago that set up an anonymous report a rapist line where people could just anonymously leave a name of a rapist, and
that's exactly the kind of thing I'm talking about.
And this person would then be called into the dean's office and given a warning.
Yeah.
So I mean,
and like some also can just troll something they don't like. I mean,
yeah, you don't like someone, you're jealous of someone breaks up with you. I mean, there's 100 reasons why people could do it.
Yeah, but let's sorry if I may.
I think the next generation of like our children are really, really gonna hate us for welcoming the state into the bedroom. Like what we've done. Like what we have done with like yes means yes and that kind of stuff, I consent applications on your phone. What we have tried to do with like enthusiastic consent, which is basically everything's rape unless you are saying yes with every single breath.
Oh, Josh, I should point out that we've been going almost an hour and I haven't asked for your consent for this stream, so.
I think it feels so good.
We'll have to ask you every 5 minutes now just to be sure.
Making a serious point here, Bane.
You know, I think
our kids are really going to be angry with us when the full effects of this are felt.
Yeah, and they'll probably swing more to the right. That will be the sad thing, because I don't think the far right is any better. But
yeah.
I'm guessing
Well, they have
that
a
there will be a
history of-
generation of right-wing extremists that come out of this.
Well, it's weird. It's begin the right kind of taking up the mantle of free speech has been a weird phenomenon of recent years.
Well, it's kind of going to be like, you know, it's going to swing from the far left, which is let's not have sex because all men are rapists, to the far right, which is let's not have sex because it'll make God angry.
Yeah.
Or something. But can I just redirect this to the title of the video?
Yeah, we do tend to go off topic a bit.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. I wanna really talk about how do we get the average person understanding men's issues and caring.
That is a difficult one. I guess
we would not be struggling with it.
I guess the answer is slowly.
Slowly.
Mothers will start to understand if they have sons. That tends to be a thing when they realise that their sons are going to go through these things. Things like suicide and things like that are also issues that tend to be understood at times. It was almost a year ago when Jess Phillips came out with that thing in the English Parliament, dismissing British Parliament, dismissing the men's issues, including suicide, and there was a huge backlash against that.
Yeah,
but most people haven't heard the statistics or are aware of it. Once they hear about it, they think, yeah, that's a pretty bad thing. Maybe there's something to it. But it's you need that continuous acknowledgement though in the media.
Just on the matter of suicide, I think it's worth pointing out, like, it's kind of tied into my little theory of overall gender dynamics and overall addressing both sides of the equation. I think most psychological statistics indicate that women have a greater rate of depression, and they even, I think, attempt suicide a little more.
That is false. That's a false.
That's false?
Yeah. The actual statistic, I hear that all the time from feminists, but the actual statistic says that they self-harm more, and
I see.
Which includes suicide attempts. They include suicide attempts, but it doesn't break it down. So we don't know if the self-harm is 90% or 10% or 50%.
What about rates of depression? I believe that's a bit more solid. I'm just curious if you know that's wrong or not.
I'm not sure, but men are less likely to talk about their mental health. So
yeah, which makes me question just how accurate that necessarily is. But at any rate,
Bing, do you know where the statistic comes from? The false one, like where exactly people went wrong? Like, is it a CDC thing or what?
I can't recall off the top of my head, but I've had this argument with a lot of people.
Just sort of categorizing self-harm overall as opposed to suicide attempts or something like that?
Yeah, women are more likely to self-harm, and the statistics, they're government statistics, but they're not broken down into what types of self-harm. So the people who claim that women attempt it more are just saying that all self-harm, which could be some form of cutting, is a suicide attempt, which is actually not true.
Okay, I can understand that. The other thing is, again, the number one statistic is, as bad as self-harm can be, the real deal is, do people actually complete?
Yeah, and that's the other thing. Even if more women did attempt, it's a pretty shitty argument to bring up every time we try to talk about male suicide.
It is.
And it's the automatic response every single time. You will get them saying, yes, that's true, but women attempt it more. Yeah, well, they're not dying more, though, are they?
No, that is fair to bring up. The thing I wanted to bring up more was not so much self-harm. We kind of got sidetracked. It was more that women do seem, we can debate it, but women do seem to have a higher rate of depression. So I would be all for people trying to advocate for like slightly better depression treatment for women, or just making a video for women. Here's how you get help for depression. That would be fine. At the same time, why not make more specific videos for men that are more about specifically suicide prevention? And that to me is becoming more enlightened about how to deal with gendered issues.
Yeah,
well,
and
actually, we're working on that right now. Bain and several of us are working together to put out a video that will tell men exactly where to go to deal with different problems.
Yeah, good. Like I said, I've been contributing to a video that's getting closer to being done. Again, that's a small sub team of the group that I mentioned earlier, the Against the Odds. I was interested in making a couple of videos myself. One kind of framework which will be about prison and men, and the other one would be just a more lighthearted one with Emma Gorowski. We talked a bit about doing maybe a series even on the good and bad of masculinity and the good and bad of femininity, for us to compare, have some fun kind of stuff.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. The topic we thought of was, and I actually wouldn't mind soliciting a few stories if people can share them. The workplace. So just to start it, she mentioned something that I'd never really known of, but I can sort of understand. She said that there's a tendency for women to actually dislike female managers and bosses more than a male one.
Typically, like there's this idea among feminists that if we can get more women in the boardroom, it will create an easier ladder for other women to climb up. But typically, female bosses are harder on female employees than male bosses are. Usually because men, as we were talking about before, men are like, they have a sort of soft approach to women that other women lack, because they're like, no chance, I can do it, so can you. You know, so if a woman says to her male boss that, you know, I can't come in on Tuesday because of women's issues or whatever, he'll say okay. Whereas if a female boss hears that, she will say, well, tough, everybody's got them, move on.
Wasn't there a business? Wasn't there a woman that started a business who hired nothing but women?
Like 2 or 3 years ago, and that was Dear talked about that.
It lasted, I think, about 6 months and fell apart.
Yeah,
just because of the infighting. And I'm not suggesting that all women are like that, but obviously those ones were.
Well, if you start a business with that premise in mind, all the women that come there are going to be special snowflakes.
Just a thought. Men tend to be very competitive in the mating game, and women, I don't know, maybe stick together more on gender issues. But maybe it's the opposite in the workplace. Maybe men stick together more and women are more competitive. I don't know. I have to think about that.
That's an interesting theory. Very difficult to prove, but it's interesting to think about. One thing I'd like to suggest, though, is that on the negative side of men, to be honest, I've seen a lot more, like the true jerk-offs who fuck around, do nothing, screw people over. They tend to be men.
Tell that to a lot of divorced men.
Yeah, I'm talking about workplace.
Oh, in workplace.
And that's just been my experience.
Sorry, I thought you meant society in general. But yeah.
No, I just mean like guys, the ones that really don't help, the ones that really just fuck about, they tend to be guys. I've noticed a higher level of consistent just work ethic from just the gender of women in the workplace. That's not meant to be a huge disparagement of men, but it's just a thing that I've seen in my experience. Another thing I'd bring up is like I've done a lot of shitty jobs in fast food and that kind of thing, right? Guys are in the back doing the kitchen work, women are in the front dealing with customers. Basically, anyone who's done both jobs will say, no competition. It's easier in the back. Fuck the front. Fuck dealing with customers. It's a pain in the ass. You got to run around a lot too. It's not even easy physically.
Yeah, no, that's does happen an awful lot. But it generally has to do with the fact that women overall are more inclined to do things that are interactive with human beings. Men like to work with gadgets and tools, and women like to work with people. Christina Hoff Sommers was talking about how there was a teacher who used to, when they were doing workshop classes, they found that a great way to engage the girls was to put a human context to what it was they were building. So rather than just say, girls, build me a model of a bridge, what they would say is, girls, build me a model of a bridge that would withstand an earthquake so that people won't be killed next time an earthquake happens. And as soon as you put a human context to it, the girls are far more interested.
Okay. I think it, again, this is part of the evolution of the whole gender discussion, is we need to get to the point where we can just discuss our differences and tendencies, really, and not be all political about it. We can just say, I've tended to notice this, and people can go, yeah, I've seen this exception, and people can go, you know what I mean? I just have a discussion, for Christ's sake.
Well,
that's exactly right.
If I may, I'm mainly speaking for myself here. Like, perhaps Bane and Omegon will agree and perhaps not, but I genuinely think that overall men would be content to give women like a little bit of a head start in most areas, because men are chivalrous by nature, and we do love women and we do want to see them happy, and we would probably let them have those little extra perks that we give them now and then for free, if it wasn't for the fact that feminism exploits that nature, that feminism takes men's chivalry and uses it against them and says, oh, you thought you were being good. No, you're not good enough. All that fighting for us, dying for us, working the hard jobs for us, going to jail more often, killing yourself more often, being 75% of the homeless, that's not good enough. We want more. We're not going to be satisfied until we own everything. That's what we expect.
Isn't another word for chivalry benevolent sexism?
Yeah.
Right.
So what I'm trying to say is that men, like you're saying, don't get politicized. Yeah. If we could all be, a little bit sort of more rational rather than political about this, men probably wouldn't mind overall giving women perks, so long as the woman respected the men for doing them rather than beat them over the head with it.
Well, now we're getting into difficult territory where there is a question, and feminists seem also a bit mixed up on this, and I can understand why. Should, we take away a lot of special treatment and then give a lot of sort of rights and responsibilities, or should we not, or should we try and get out of gender roles, or should we embrace them to a more moderate extent? Or there's a lot of ways you could go with this, and I don't think that actually we should say there's only one way, because I think different people want different systems, and so long as they can. Sorry.
What feminists really need to decide ultimately, this is the big decision that they are that is put upon their shoulders that they've never been able to properly make, is, do they want to be protected or do they want to be respected? Because they are naturally contradictory. If you're given extra help in life, if you're given extra help in life, people don't respect you as much. And if you do everything for yourself, people will respect you more. So feminists need to decide, do they want women to have special treatment, or do they want everyone to see women as fully capable?
Yeah, you're close. It comes down to autonomy versus responsibility and disposability. So if someone has a lot of autonomy, then they have a low level of protection, right? But if someone has a high level of protection, they have a low level of autonomy. And we saw this in the past where women were protected, but they had less autonomy. So now they want equal autonomy to men, which is fine, but they don't want the same risks that men have with their autonomy, and that's the problem.
I think that's a way of describing a good chunk of it. It's more complex than that, but there is that dynamic.
If you want the vote, that's fine, but you also have to have the draft. You know, that's simple.
Yeah, I've heard that argument, and I would almost say get rid of the draft and just have.
Yeah, well, that's an alternative as well. But back when women
But I
first got the
understand.
vote, the vote was tied to men going off to war and dying. The average man got the vote because he went off to war and died for it.
Personally, like, I understand, I have sympathy for that position, I really do. Personally, I still would probably say if women don't, if women have to get the vote but not get the draft, that's better than not having neither, I think.
Yeah,
we can debate that if we want, but that's probably not terribly productive.
Oh no, I think women should have the vote, but what I'm saying is, you can't have
it's a legitimate point to raise.
You can't have the autonomy of having the vote without the responsibility of what men have as well, you know, and
it's sort of about also the lenses through which we view the world. I remember seeing that that whole. Do you remember that lady who went on like undercover as a man?
Yes.
That was quite interesting. And she said, "Look, you know, when you're a woman, you sort of dismiss it and you think, oh, it can't be that bad. But you know, being a man, you got to work harder at a lot more things than you realized you had to."
Yeah, exactly right.
And it would be just so productive for genuinely difficult issues as well as trivial things if we talked more. Again, this is me advocating for balance, as I always bloody do, and I'm sure people will get tired of it, but that's okay.
No, it's good. We need people like you in the middle doing that.
Well, yeah, but thanks. And again, what I was saying is, like with the video about the good and bad of masculinity, the good and bad of femininity, and that kind of conversation, then that really helps even the bigger issues, because it starts to get people just talking without the hostility, you know, just relating with one another.
Yeah, well, I did a hangout with Tim a couple of weeks ago now, and Tim and I used to the masculinity one.
So I saw a bit of that.
Yeah. Tim and I used to really dislike each other a little while ago, but we've now become quite friendly. So, and I don't mind Tim.
Yeah. No, look, I'm doing a stream with him at some point. I think it was Thursday we had it planned. Or I'll have to double check. I might be confused, but we definitely have one on the cards. And I hope he doesn't mind me saying this. He's a very dutiful SJW soldier, but I think his heart is in the right place, and he can be dealt with. And the fact that he wants to cross over and talk with people that he could easily just dismiss and fight instead of talk with is a very good quality that he seems to have.
I thought he was very reasonable on the masculinity stream. I thought he made some good points, and he listened to the counterpoints and considered them. So I respect him for that.
I think, yes, and I think he also caused more debate and more counterpoints of his own than if you hadn't had him.
Yeah. Well, I like hearing the other voice, the other side of things. You need that,
and it hones you. This is the thing I love about debate when it's good. It hones both sides. It makes them both better.
Yeah, exactly.
Be challenged.
Without hearing the other side, how do you know your arguments are correct? Basically, you're just living in an echo chamber.
That's something that that I really protest about when feminists, you know, they tear down posters of Christina Hoff Sommers or Milo Yiannopoulos coming to campus to give their speeches, and they protest and they bar doors and they fire air horns and they pull the fire alarm, anything to make sure that nobody hears the speech. And it's like, if you are so convinced your argument is right, why don't you let it stand up to scrutiny?
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. Again, I just want to bring it back just a little bit more again, so that people who click on the title don't feel completely jibbed.
I can change the title. Don't worry.
Oh yeah, sure. That might be, you know, to something that fits the content. But let's see. Let me see what I've got. Donald Dutton. Do you know Skeptor, who's actually a member of the Against the Odds group?
Yeah, I know Skeptor.
he posted a very interesting video. I should really watch the rest of it. It's a bit long, but a long speech by Donald Dutton on domestic violence. And the core of it was, yeah, you get a certain set of numbers if you look at crime statistics. But if you look at a different kind of survey where you just ask people, like, what has been done in your relationship? Not whether it's crime, not their opinion on it, sort of more what has been done, what is happening. You get a very different picture of the whole domestic violence situation. And I wonder, have you seen that?
No, I haven't.
That video by Donald Dutton.
There's so many different
It might be
studies
very
on-
interesting to you.
Yeah, I'll check it out.
Let me see if I can find it. Let me see. I think a lot of people could be interested in it because
Well, shoot me a link on Twitter and I'll put in the description once the video's rendered and uploaded.
Sure. Just remind me to do that so I don't forget. Or I'll try and remember. Don't worry. That would be good. But he was essentially saying, look, the most common stuff is mutual. I think that was what he said. It was either the most common stuff was mutual and women on men. I don't think it was very significant women on men, although that might just be talking out of my ass because I can't honestly. There's still a part of me, call it gynocentrism, that like I have my relationship and I actually solicit being hit sometimes just so that they can express their frustration with me in a way that sort of just gets it over and done with.
Are you training her to be an abuser? That's not good.
Oh, absolutely not. Like that's not the dynamic. But like if I had to say, do I hit her? No. Does she hit me? Yes. I don't mind. I actually kind of like it. I'm being a jerk, right, for my own amusement, and I get her to do that just so that she can express herself.
Yeah, but is it like a playful hit or is it?
Oh yeah.
Well, that's something different than a serious hit, though, isn't it?
But
I think
I would never hit her even in play. I just wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
But I was actually going to interject and say that if it was a serious hit, that it was actually going to cause long-term damage. I mean, if it's just a kind of tap, that's totally fine. But if it's an actual slap, that's going to associate anger with violence, in the brain. That's why they say, for example, don't use a punching bag if you're frustrated, because you're more likely to lash out at someone violently if you do, because your brain associates the two.
That's interesting, but I think in this particular case, that's not going to be the path that it happens. I just trust me. I know who I'm talking about. They're actually very private, so they probably wouldn't even like me mentioning them to this extent. But I haven't given their name or anything. They'll be fine.
I'll put an address in the chat. So
yeah, sure.
Her phone number is.
Yeah.
No, look, I understand what you mean. It's not serious.
Yeah,
but
there is
that's fine. But
the hitting is sexual.
I would think. I would think twice, like maybe even 4 times, and not do it. That's kind of my position on even playfully hitting a woman. And that still shows the whole sort of dynamic as being women hurting men or hitting men or whatever, just isn't seen as being that serious. And maybe there is a very subtle truth that might be difficult for both sides to accept, and that's something like, given the general outlook of most men and women, it kind of does make sense that one hitting the other is not as significant. That's only when it's not. That's generally when it's playful. It's a difficult thing to bring up, the idea that.
So there's a couple of issues here, right? Men, a lot of men are less likely to hit women. I know we hear all the time that men apparently are beating women all the time, but the truth is there are a lot of men out there who would really have to be pushed the breaking point to hit a woman. You sound like you're one of them. I'm probably one of them too. I've never been pushed that far. I would find it hard. Although I guess if I had to, out of self-defense, then I would, but I wouldn't feel good about it.
Yeah, something like that. That's pretty much
yeah. So men like that leave themselves open to abuse because they can be hit repeatedly and won't fight back, even though they might have a size advantage. And there's also the factor that women typically are more likely to use a weapon.
I see.
So even though men might have a size advantage, you can still even things out quite a bit with a weapon.
In my opinion, it's basically, I would say that a man who starts a fight with a woman should be punished more severely than a woman who starts a fight with a man, because he does have a size advantage and he is using that to his advantage. However, I believe that if a woman gets into a fight with a man and she starts the fight and he finishes it by using self-defense and punching her back, I don't think that people should view him negatively for doing that, because she started to fight. I think that it would be how is it fair to say to one person, okay, either you let her hit you or you let the cops hit you? That's the only way out of this, that you let her hit you because it's better than letting the system hit you. I would say that if she picks a fight with him and he punches her back, that's her fault. Because if I was to go out there and pick a fight with, Michael Jordan, right? People would say, well, that was stupid on your part. He was bigger than you and you picked a fight with him. That's your fault. And women have just as much agency as I do.
Can we all agree that solving things with violence is wrong?
Yeah,
we can all agree on that.
I completely agree. But what I'm trying to say is I am worried about men because they are stuck in this catch-22 of, if you have a violent spouse, you cannot defend yourself because either you let her hit you or you let the state hit you.
Yeah, it is a bit. I think there is a real case for a bit more nuance in all that sort of thing, and the thing that has gotten brought up a little bit in the group that I'm in, and in general it gets brought up, the Duluth model, the sort of very one side does this and the other side receives it kind of thinking. It's dare I say, problematic.
Yeah, well, the Duluth model's definition of domestic violence is when a man assumes authority over a woman. There's no mention of men hitting men who are hit by women who beat other women. There's basically for all gay and heterosexual relationships where the woman is abuser, they're all dismissed.
No, that's women imitating men, you see. I've actually heard that type of stuff before. So if a man does something, it's because he's a man. If a woman does it, it's because she's imitating men, which is an amazing way of looking at the world.
Yeah.
Basically, if you go to duluthmodel.org, you'll find that there is no place for men who are being abused. If you actually try and find it on the website, the closest you'll get is help for men who are abusers.
Wow.
Yeah, that's pretty common around the Western world, unfortunately.
The thing I'd like to ask about, actually, that this was brought up, and again brings us to the topic, is I have heard it claimed that when male domestic violence shelters have been opened, they don't get used. Now, have you looked into that, Bane?
I've never heard that claim before. I know there's a couple in England, and my understanding is they're filled to capacity. And I got that from a news clip.
Say over and over, Bane. Jesus.
Sorry, what?
You keep saying England when you mean the UK.
I'm sorry, Mr. Pedantic.
You cultural appropriation bastard.
It's fucking wrong. That's why. It's like saying California, U.S. Oh, I went to Washington, D.C. in California. No, you fucking didn't.
Okay. Let's be honest. So the English conquered the UK, and they took it all over, and they're horrible bastards, and they're whatever.
Yeah.
Who knows?
I know a lovely
UK
girl
is
who would get
it's all
on
the
with
same.
very well, Joshua.
I'm just talking shit. So yeah, I've heard this claim, but it made me think. Like, don't you need, if you're gonna have domestic violence shelters for men, don't you need them to be, A, you need to let people know they exist, and B, you need to campaign just a little bit to make men feel like it's okay to go there.
Well, like I said, my understanding, the ones in England, sorry, UK, are filled to capacity, and I know Earl Silverman opened up one in.
No, he didn't. Tried to, but he couldn't.
Well, he did. He did have one open for a while. He mortgaged his own house to open it.
As in, he could never set up an official one.
No, it wasn't official. He did it, out of his own pocket, and ended up committing suicide because of the pressure. I think he lost his house and a whole heap of things. But I'm pretty sure he was always filled to capacity as well. Men are typically sent to homeless shelters.
I've heard that.
Yeah, that's the domestic abuse system for men, to go to homeless shelters. And you have to wonder, I mean, we hear all the time about the number of women who are killed by domestic abuse, but you have to wonder what percentage of the male suicide rate is caused by men who are in domestic abuse situations and get no help, don't even get believed.
Now, can I point out that in the UK, men have to be screened before they're allowed into the domestic violence shelters that exist. However, women do not. If a woman turns up at a domestic violence shelter and there's space, she will be taken in automatically. But men need to be screened to make sure, because there's so little space, that they're not lying.
And Erin Pitsey, who started the first domestic abuse shelter in the 70s in England.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
And she's an MRA icon, by the way. When she opened up her domestic abuse shelter for women, she realized that there was a need for men. This is back in the 70s. And she tried to raise money to get a men's shelter opened, and she couldn't get anyone to donate.
Not only that,
I've heard about this story a little bit.
She found, there was, she discovered statistics about the fact that a lot of women who were coming in were violent themselves, and they would be violent towards their kids. And she was like, so this is not just a man who hits a woman. There's quite a lot of these women who are hitting their men. There's quite a lot of mutual violence. It's not a one-way street here. So let's get out there. Let's try and get statistics out there about how many battered men exist. And she got threats from feminists who said that's absolutely not true. There are no battered men. No women are violent. And she was they had to check her letters for bombs. Eventually they killed her dog. And
no. Actually, that was a different thing. She said most likely it was a pedophile ring that killed her dog.
Really?
Oh, great.
In New Mexico. Yeah, because after she fled England, because of the bomb threats, she went to New Mexico, where she took on a pedophile ring, and her dog was poisoned, which she thinks was probably the pedophile ring.
Okay.
So, amazing woman, absolutely amazing woman.
Seems like it. I want to bring up, Marra Jane has just said, hey, Bane, we might be able to get Cassie out for the Sydney screening.
Oh, cool.
I assume that's to do with the red pill.
Yep.
Well, that'd be pretty interesting. Again,
Do you mind if I bring Marra Jane in here?
Oh, absolutely not.
All right, I'll just send her the link. So continue talking in the meantime, folks. I'll just do a second.
I don't suppose that. Oh Christ! Yeah, Near Edge. As long as she doesn't get banned from Australia. Actually, we should look at the comments a bit more. I don't want to leave people out too much. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I find the comments can be a bit distracting sometimes.
Yeah, I tried to look at them with Emma Garaski, but she didn't have too many, so it was kind of easier.
Yeah, I tend to go in and out of the comments a bit.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, as long as she doesn't get banned from Australia. I don't think they're going to ban an actual woman, believe it or not. I think that's going to help
They
her.
did start a petition to try to ban her from Australia.
Seriously?
Yeah,
She
it was
made a
great.
movie. She also made that movie about Daddy I Do, which was like it was about what was it about? It was about these weird sort of things about women pledging to their fathers to remain celibate until marriage or something like that.
Yeah, I know. But
Yeah.
you know, she has dared to go against the feminist narrative. So there was actually a petition started, I think, a week and a half ago to ban her from Australia. It was, I think, the aim was to get 100 signatures, and last I checked, it was around 50. So it didn't really take off the ground like the last one.
Yeah.
I think
That's
people might have
probably
realised that the last one gave us a lot of publicity. Thanks for that, by the way.
Well, censorship has that kind of tendency often.
Well,
It's called the Streisand effect.
It
Yeah,
really
yeah,
stuffed around David from Men's Rights Melbourne, who put a lot of effort into getting it screened, and he managed to get it shown last Sunday. So they didn't really achieve anything except cause poor David a lot of hassle.
Was there a
But they
Melbourne
gave us a lot of
screening in the end?
publicity along the way. Sorry?
Was there a Melbourne screening in the end?
Yeah, last Sunday.
Oh, fantastic.
Yep.
How did it go down?
Apparently with no hassles. What they had to do was to get mobile numbers from everyone who bought a ticket, and then they had to text them the location of a meetup beforehand.
Yeah.
Because they kept the theatre a secret, and then they moved. I think they went there as a group, and they had hide security in the cinema to throw anyone out who caused any hassle. So it's amazing that they had to go to that level to watch a movie.
It's amazing. It really makes one a bit frightened, doesn't it?
Yeah, just a bit. But I can't think why we would criticize feminists. You know, it's beyond me.
Well, look, again, it's probably just a matter of tactics, if nothing else, and also engaging those ones that can be won over. It's worth trying to do.
I agree. I fully support talking to the middle ground. But I didn't see any of them come out and criticize the petition. I actually asked them to in a video. I don't know how many saw that. Actually, one did.
Okay.
American Anarchist did. I'll give him credit for that.
I asked Chrisiosity personally and got nothing but silence.
Well, look, she is. I don't want to make too many excuses for her. In my dealings with her, she seemed pretty reasonable.
I know. I'm
sure she's not
just
perfect.
pointing that out. That it is fair to say that, you know, she's the leader of Against All Odds, and she did not respond to me whatsoever when I did ask her personally to stand against that censorship. So whilst we're singing her praises, let's also talk about things that she hasn't done.
Sure.
And I think it's a fair point. If there are a group of feminists who are giving the mainstream a bad name, which is that's the excuse we hear all the time. It's not all feminists, it's just those few radical ones over there which are causing the problem. Fine, when they do something like this, come out publicly and condemn it. That's simple.
They have a sense of solidarity. A lot of feminism is based on solidarity. I mean, this was something I actually thought about bringing up, and it's I think a lot of people identify as feminists just to express solidarity to women, and even to an extent to express solidarity to women through history.
Well, yeah, but that blind commitment is half the problem, because you can't solve issues in your movement that way.
Yeah, well, did any of you see Bering's stream with the ranting feminists the other night?
Yeah.
Oh, did he do a stream?
I gotta say, I'm not a fan of the ranting feminist. Maybe I should give her more of a chance, but
I've talked with her and found her okay. She often softens her position a bit with a bit of prodding from me. That's what I've found.
Yeah, it was quite interesting. It was more or less saying, she was more or less saying that feminists won't discuss any disagreements publicly ever to present a united front.
And I try to persuade her a bit on that front. I don't think that's the right decision, but
No, it's stupid. Well, that's why they get so much criticism, because, like, if they were, criticizing each other, no one else would feel the need to.
Yeah, if they're not going to self-police, then surely anti-feminists have to step up and do it. Otherwise, you just get echo chambers and radicals.
Well, as I said before, if you're not going to stand against it, you might as well condone it.
Yeah.
I don't think that's always the case, but
No.
there is
I
something to that.
don't mean to simplify things utterly, but what I'm trying to say is that if you call yourself a feminist, and say one person says, "Okay, Mr. President, I'm a feminist. I speak on behalf of these million people, and we want this," and the million people sort of shuffle their feet and don't disagree with it, they might as well, if they're giving their name and therefore supposedly giving their consent to that person speaking on their behalf, if they don't speak up and say, actually, no, this person doesn't speak for me. If, imagine there's a group of 5 people, someone walks by and one of them hurls an insult and the other 4 say nothing. People are going to assume the other 4 agree with it.
Let me put it this way.
Part of the group, if you call yourself a feminist and you don't stand up and disagree with the people who are speaking on your behalf, you might as well agree with it.
Let me put it this way. There will be a lot of people today in America who will not vote. And whoever gets in, those people who don't vote don't really have much of a right to complain, because they didn't take part in the process, did they? They chose not to.
Unless they kind of really hate both. And
I know. But
I think that's really an Australian mentality, because we've got compulsory voting.
Yeah.
A lot of people that I've spoken to from countries that don't have that, because we're only one of the very few that do, that's like a protest as opposed to the way we see it here.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you end up with a minority voting in the government. I don't think compulsory voting is a bad thing, to be honest.
I think there's an argument you can make either way. I'm not sure on it myself, to be honest.
I think a lot of people will get busy and they think, I should probably vote, or maybe I'll do it later, and they end up not doing it. And you end up getting, because people can be lazy, and you end up getting a government voted in by a minority. The other argument is that you get votes from people who don't care about who wins.
Yeah.
And you also can make the argument.
They also vote on a weekday. It's really weird when I see elections happening in other countries on a weekday, and I'm just like, what the fuck?
Yeah, it's not a public holiday, is it? People have to take time off work or something?
Yeah, I think the polls open at 6 a.m. and close at like 8 p.m. depending on your state.
It's weird. The American system's weird. Anyway, we've got on to politics, so we should get back to. So the red pill, Sydney. What's going on?
Yeah, let's hear.
Okay, so a guy that is in the University of Western Sydney's Skeptic Society has managed, I don't know if he's the head of it or just in it, he's managed to get the academic package for the movie, and so he's hosting a screening, and there's going to have to be a discussion or Q&A or something afterwards, because it has to be done in presented in an academic setting. But that's going to be on the 3rd of December at 1 p.m. at University of Western Sydney, Bankstown. I'm going to be doing a video on it.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm going to be doing a video on that tomorrow with all the details. But Cassie has said that she's definitely interested in attending. So we're launching a crowdfunding campaign, I think tonight or tomorrow. Yeah, we need to try and raise $12,000 in like 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we're just hoping we can.
You never know, it's possible, I guess.
Yeah, so what we're going to do is, because the tickets are, well, there's no tickets, it's just first come, first served, but if people commit money over a certain amount, they get a reserved seat, and
So is
and
it
there's
free?
other rewards. Yeah, it's free. So if there's anyone in Sydney that is free on the 3rd of December, yes, you might. I don't know. There's 500 seats, so there's still a fair few seats.
I wonder if it'll run into some problems though. Not that it should, but it might.
Well,
I was just about to
possibly,
say, have
but
you heard any
we-
rumblings?
Apparently on campus there's starting to be a few rumblings. But we're also I've heard back from Sarah Harris, who is the main host of Studio 10. She's interested in coming.
That's
and
interesting.
I've invited.
Oh, is
the rest
that
of Studio
that program, the TV program?
10. Yeah.
Cool.
That's the one that
Yep.
talked
Okay.
about it, wasn't
Yeah,
it? The five
that's
hosts.
why I sent. Yeah, that's why I sent invites to them. Mainly, I kind of just want to see Jessica Rose's face when she realizes that it doesn't promote what the petition says it promotes.
Yeah, she's the one that said it was pro-rape, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Fantastic.
So you've seen it.
Hmm?
You've seen it then?
I
haven't seen. I don't think anyone here has seen it, but I know plenty of people who have. I know people who are in it. So
Yeah, I haven't seen it, but the MRM isn't pro-rape, and
No.
I'm
I
pretty sure
looked
there'd
at-
be a lot of uproar from a lot of MRAs right now that have seen it if the movie was portrayed in a pro-rape way.
not only that, but it's got a couple of bad reviews, and not one of them actually said it was pro-rape in any way. That would be the first thing they would say if it
Well,
was.
how well is it reviewing, by the way? Who is reviewing it?
Well, the Village Voice, I think, was the first one out with a review, and that shit canned it, but there was bias as fuck.
Yeah.
I see.
People who have actually seen it have a very different opinion, though.
The really only non-MRA review that I have heard is the one that Karen responded to that podcast.
Yeah,
Oh, the
Gigi and
podcasty review. Yeah, that seemed a bit.
And
the guy seemed to
but-
be convinced.
Yeah, but even she couldn't actually really criticize the movie. All she could do was try and make out that, but women have it worse.
Yeah, and she thought that she was going to get acid thrown in her face for going to the.
God, what a drama queen!
I know, but I mean that's just incredible to think that MRAs would do that. It's
They really
It's
have built
interesting.
up the MRM to be just this group of absolute monsters, haven't they?
It's the way that all discourse has been going. You know, your enemies are just monsters.
And
well, just because we dress up as Nazis and eat newborn babies doesn't mean we're monsters. I keep telling people that, but they won't listen.
But I think the biggest thing as well is a lot of them will be like, oh, I heard from a friend who heard from a friend who heard from a friend who heard from her professor that the MRM are awful. And none of them have actually ever read any material.
Yeah, and you ask for citations. Can you give examples? They'll say all MRAs are blank, and you say, "Can you give examples?"
Can you name one?
"Yeah," and they'll say, well, I don't have to give. I don't have to give examples." So I go, "Well, you're making a claim that we're all like that. You should be able to give at least a couple." And if they come up with anything, it will be Roosh V or someone like that who's not an MRA.
Oh God.
Yep.
As soon as I hear someone conflate Roosh V or Elliot Rogers as an MRA, I'm just like, yeah, and
Instant fail.
This just tells me that you know absolutely nothing about what you're trying to talk about.
Or Meninists.
So I don't think it's and so I don't think it's worth even having a conversation with you until you go and do some reading, sweetheart.
Yeah, I remember.
That's what I hear.
I remember earlier this year, someone put up a video saying Roosh V was an MRA and he was promoting rape, and all MRAs are promoting rape, and blah blah blah. And I commented saying that Roosh V isn't an MRA and that they should do some research. I was polite.
He actively says, "I am not an MRA."
Yeah, but I was polite, and I got a very, very aggressive response saying that I was ignorant and I should do research and I should go and check out Return of Kings before I dared to respond with such an ignorant comment and blah, blah, blah. So I went to Return of Kings and I spent 5 minutes there finding all the comments which basically disproved the allegation that they're an MRA site, and posted it, and they removed the video a day later. It must have embarrassed them to that point that they had to remove it.
Yeah, because again, they never find any of this out firsthand. They just hear it from their friends and never actually look into any of it at all, and so they take it as gospel.
But it amazed me that I was being accused of not knowing what I was talking about.
I know.
And not reading the site when I have been there, only to research videos, by the way. I don't particularly like the site. But it was pretty clear that they hadn't been there themselves. It's just absolutely amazing.
I'm not even a men's rights activist, and I know that they're not MRAs. Holy shit.
Well, we're happy to have you anytime.
I'm pretty sure everyone here knows that I'm very, very sympathetic to the cause, and I am more than happy to advocate, but I don't think I'm willing to take on the label exclusively. So.
Well, if you ever want a membership card, we'll get you one, but you do have to make the sandwiches.
But don't you hate women though? Aren't you guys just like misogynistic cunts who just want ham sandwiches all day?
Yeah, that's why Karen Strawn is the most popular MRA, and we have such respect for Erin Pitsey, who is the woman who started the first domestic abuse shelter in the UK, because we hate women.
You hate women.
Yeah, makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
I think that so I just wanted to. Oh Christ! Now I forgot what I was going to say.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, I think feminism is like when they've come up. A lot of the historical opposition has been, to an extent, like not 100%, but a lot of their historical opposition has been more or less true sexism, and they think then that any opponent must be a sexist. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, the thing is, and I've said this quite often, I think the anti-feminist movement is far more diverse than the feminist movement itself.
Possibly.
Oh yeah.
Oh, most definitely. The one thing we agree on is we disagree with feminist ideology.
Yeah.
We pretty much disagree on everything else.
Well,
yeah.
That also reminds me of the bearing stream with the ranting feminist. Something she said, it was like, you got, like, she said something about how, anti-feminists or whatever never call each other out, and just like, and this goes back to what we were saying about people that are against MRAs. They just don't ever actually look at any of our stuff. Like, all you need to do is like go on Twitter for literally 2 seconds, and you will see that Spinosaurus is fighting with fucking Edgy or that guy T or someone, and then Sargon's fighting with AIU, and someone else is fighting with someone else, and it's just a giant clusterfuck of. We all really only agree on one thing, and that's about it.
We basically agree on who our enemy, one of our enemies are, but otherwise we are enemies with ourselves as well.
Well, think of it this way. America and the Soviet Union were allies against the Nazis. It doesn't mean that America was a communist state.
No.
Yeah, that's fair.
But that's their mentality. They've got a common enemy, so they must be the same.
Yeah, no, honestly,
I think
so fucking diverse.
The whole lumping people in together, like, I almost did it there myself when I said, almost sort of implied that I was on the skeptic side. In some ways I am, in some ways I'm not. In some ways I really do believe in the whole centrism thing. But
this is getting to that bigger point. Like, I remember 2 ethicists, I think it's Steven Pinker and what's his name? Peter Singer. Well, they're not. I think Steven Pinker is not technically an ethicist, but they were on the topic. And they were saying how the new ethics is not necessarily about how we function within a group, but how we relate to other groups. And that's sort of the future of how we need to change our thinking in order to function better as an even larger society than humanity has ever been before. and to do so in a way that's positive. I think we see so much in America now with the election. I don't know. I said I didn't want to bring it up, but now I'm bringing it up. We see just how absolute so many people are in. We are all good. They're all bad. There is no middle ground. There is no compromise. This, even if we can make a lot of negative judgments and criticisms of either side, there is a very fundamental and big reason to at least have dialogue with the other side, try and keep it civil, and to cooperate where cooperation can be reached. You look at like the U.S. Senate and Congress, the way they can't even cooperate to pass bills to just keep the government functioning. It's so destructive and ridiculous.
It is. Like that whole budget thing a few years ago.
Oh my God. They threatened to basically commit. I don't want to get into it too much, but there is so much value to even with small things. Even if most of us here will say, by and large, feminism has more problems than good points these days. We should still concede whatever we can, just to be fair, just to keep dialogue open, just to...
I do that all the time. I don't disagree. I don't disagree with all feminists.
I'm saying this more for the audience than you, Bane, because I'm kind of realizing...
But I mean, I'm not the only MRA who's like that. There's lots of people on our side who do that. I'm a big admirer of Karen DeCrow. I've even heard Karen say that she likes Karen DeCrow.
Karen Strawn?
Yeah, Karen Strawn.
Well, those Karen bitches stick together, don't they?
Yeah. I think, as we were talking about before, right, the whole how do we get sort of men's issues a bit more traction in the mainstream. So we talked about the whole shift away from just getting attention however we can, the Paul Elam approach, if you will, and now shifting to the more moderate, let's open the dialogue, let's actually be heard, let's make sure our points are being made in a way that's accessible.
Well, what you do is you talk about the issues to the point where your opposition has no choice but to shift their position and admit that you do have issues. And that's what's been happening in the last couple of years.
But then there's another step beyond that as well, I think.
Oh, yeah, this is only the beginning. But we are seeing in some feminist articles now things like, yes, men have issues, but... a few years ago, it was men don't have issues. Men are privileged.
Sure. And I think... sorry, go on.
Oh, I was just going to say, more or less, once you can get them to accept the fact without the but, then... Because humans aren't wired to care too much about men. And that's, like, then, yeah, but, like, I see so many things where people will acknowledge, like, something horrible has happened to a man, and they're like, oh, this is so sad. You know, this really needs to change. Like, there was a teenage boy that was raped at school recently, and I commented in there, I'm like, look, this fucking sucks, but I can guarantee all of you next week will have forgotten that this ever happened. Whereas, and again, like, I have not seen anything about that since. But if that had been a girl that got raped at school, like, fuck, it would still be going. There'd be constant updates. So people are willing to admit that horrible things happen to men, but then they can't bring themselves to care about it for longer than it takes to read the story.
Yeah, the whole caring thing is actually maybe one of the big next steps. I actually thought you were going to talk more about the narrative, and the caring matters.
Yeah, no,
and that should be talked about. But
we need to start trying to appeal to emotion a bit more as well.
Perhaps, yeah. But I also see a need for an evolved gender narrative, and like I was sort of saying a bit earlier, you turn it from patriarchy or gynocentrism into a holistic view of the gender dynamic. all the good things and all the bad things and all the questionable things and all the historical things, and we try and put it all into perspective and not get too caught up in one particular side against another side. We'll say men against men, women against women, men against women, and women against men. What is the story on all those fronts?
Yeah, so what you're saying is we should just deal with the issues and not gender the issues. And I tend to agree. The problem is we do have a tendency to put women first. So even if we started a neutral group, which was just to deal with the issues, I think you will find there will be, over time, a certain creep where women's issues start to become more important. Yeah.
Well, then what you have to embed in the group, then that's a reasonable thing to bring up, but it's not entirely without a solution, or at least a partial solution. You sort of embed the idea of what it is when people have more natural sympathy for women over men, perhaps, and start to challenge that. I mean, women want to talk about challenging the patriarchy. We can also talk about challenging the elements of gynocentrism that may exist.
Yeah, and that's what we're doing over in the MRM, or trying to anyway.
Sure. And again, I think there's going to be feminism and MRM for at least a long time. I think that we also need, and a lot of people do already identify as sort of gender egalitarian and that sort of thing. I don't know. It may not actually be the smartest thing to turn it into an institution the way that feminism has, because there are a lot of problems when you do that.
No, I don't think any of us want to go that route. And to be honest, every men's rights activist I know want to reach a point where we're no longer needed. And I think one of our criticisms of feminism is they're always coming up with new crazy things to justify their existence. Whereas we would prefer not to exist. I'd prefer just to call myself an egalitarian, because I no longer need to be an MRA and an egalitarian.
I did a little research prior to the stream that hopefully maybe people might find interesting. So I just Googled, what did I Google? Most important feminist issues. But I knew it was going to kind of come up. Now, let's go with the Huffington Post's article. If you, I'm sure that'll be fun.
No, let's not.
Right? Okay, but it actually is interesting just in regard to what you can criticize and what you can sort of see their point. The 12 issues facing women. Domestic violence is number one.
Which I would say is a generational issue more than a gender issue, but anyway.
It's got a number of elements, and again, that's something you can address holistically, but I'm not saying there's no place for any advocacy for women in this regard. Just don't design the whole system to make it impossible to address other things.
Bingo.
Yeah. Female genital mutilation, again, I would say similarly, just address it as a whole.
Yep.
They're both bad. You were bringing up on a stream like men die frequently in like a lot of more impoverished countries.
In South Africa in particular, they have a circumcision season every year where 15-year-old boys are taken off to villages where people with no medical training circumcise them with unhygienic implements. And it's a common thing for them to get infections, to have their penises amputated, and to die. I think there's something like 30 or 40 who routinely die every year just in South Africa.
And it's the whole, I think the problem with the whole circumcision thing is women, that's me generalizing, that's a terrible mistake. Feminists often compare it like first world medical grade male circumcision with the horrible kind of third world female circumcision. What we should kind of compare like with like. So
exactly. That's an argument I've been making a long time. And if someone said, well, why don't we perform female circumcision in first world hospitals, there would be an outrage.
Yeah.
And rightly so. But apparently that's the excuse for not caring about male circumcision,
Well,
which is
Yeah,
weird.
it's a-
You know what's really, really creepy about male circumcision? Pretty much everyone that I have spoken to that have had, because I'm obviously in a few mums groups on Facebook and stuff.
Could you speak up a little bit, Marra?
Sorry. Every time I'm in like on.
No, I think it's audio settings or something.
Hmm?
I think
Can't
your
hear me?
audio settings are. Yeah, they're not great. Or maybe you're too far away.
I don't know. Give me a second.
Are you
Sorry, it's
are
just.
you on your phone or?
Yeah, I'm on my phone.
That might be it. All right,
Okay,
we'll just have to listen really closely.
Sorry, I'll talk loud. I'm gonna have to go shortly anyway. But
Okay.
because I'm in a few mums groups on Facebook and stuff, every time circumcision gets brought up, I'll say, so why did you get it done? It's like, oh, because I think that uncircumcised penises look weird. I'm like, so you cut off some of your son's penis because of your sexual preferences?
Yeah, I've heard that one brought up. I think on a Bane stream actually, with the whole mothers using their preferences to make that kind of
It's
decision.
so
for their
creepy.
Yeah,
children.
a good friend of mine, his sister's a fairly fanatical feminist, and when she had her son, she got him circumcised because she said she did it for his future wife, which
That's
horrified my
It's
friend.
It's so creepy. It's so creepy.
Pretty much. Do you want to hear a bit more of the list? Because it gets.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, number 3, breastfeeding.
In public.
Yeah, pretty much. Sure, I guess let him. I don't really have a problem with it. I don't know what the problem is. Sort of indecency, hoo-ha kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'm good friends with someone who I often have on streams called Little Miss Anonymous, and I think that's probably the one issue that we disagree on. So
Well,
she's against it. I don't care. So
well, with me, because I've breastfed publicly, but I always covered up. Like I would either wear a loose fitting top where, I could just lift it up and you couldn't see anything because it would hang down on either side, or I'd put a wrap over Bubby or whatever. But I think a lot of the issues is a lot of, because my sister's like this, they will breastfeed as obviously and as purposely and modestly as possible to try and get a reaction. Like one of them, there was I've personally seen a woman, she was wearing a t-shirt, and instead of, and it was a loose shirt, instead of lifting it up, she literally pulled her boob out over the top through the neck of the shirt to breastfeed. So she was doing it intentionally. And a guy had been facing her in his seat, and he just changed seats, so his back was to her. Well, she decided to cause a scene for him being a misogynistic prick who liked to sexualize a baby eating.
I see.
A lot of them just do it for the drama and to try and make people uncomfortable, so then they can tell them that they're wrong.
Yeah, I think with breastfeeding, I think the legal position is one thing, and there's just don't be a jerk about it then.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the way I saw it. I never received any sort of. I've only ever received 2 comments from strangers when I was breastfeeding, and one of them was just a woman coming up saying, "It's so good to see a young mum breastfeeding. You don't see that often these days. They usually formula feed their babies." And
Okay.
I don't have a problem with it. I don't think it's an issue, to be honest. Well, it shouldn't be an issue.
It is this very slight issue, and I think we're actually more or less in support of the right to do it. Probably just make an effort not to, you can even be obvious about it, but don't go out of your way to create a scene. Yeah, don't create a scene.
Be a prick.
On that level, you can be obvious about it if you want.
I can understand there might be some people who are more conservative, maybe from a religious background, who would have an issue with it, but ultimately, I don't think it shouldn't be a big deal.
I don't think. not as major as other things. Number 4, sex-selective abortions. So the idea is that it's sort of encroaching on abortion rights. I don't really think.
So hold on. This is a list of the most important feminist issues. Are they talking about in China or?
Well, good question. The full title is 12 Issues Facing Women That Are Just As, If Not More, Important Than Body Image. I know it's a weird title, but it's what came up with most important feminist issues. That's the closest thing we have.
They would be talking about maybe aborting children in China, because I think it's more productive to have a male child in a rural area.
Actually, they're talking about the UK.
Oh, UK.
So they're saying sex-selective abortion is illegal in the UK. I would tend to say, look, it's not a great reason to abort a kid, but I don't want to make it a matter of law, because then you have to pretend there's a bigger reason, and then the state kind of, like, it seems a silly thing to try and legislate, if you know what I mean.
Well, it's funny it's not funny, it's awful, but apparently I think it was in Canada, in the Indian demographics, they very often abort they will very often abort girls in Canada, in Indian communities and stuff. So it's kind of just like, well, whose side did the feminists take? Do they take?
Yeah, they're talking about it encroaching on abortion rights, and then there's the other end where people are mostly aborting women.
Yeah. So whose side do they take?
Well, it's such a tricky issue. I don't think the way to address it is with legislation so much as trying to promote cultural change. But I understand.
I don't like
number 5 is a good one. Catcalling.
Oh, don't take away my catcalling.
As a woman, Marra, does it happen often to you?
It hasn't happened as often since I had a baby, and I think that's probably because I just am exhausted all the time. But when it does happen, because it still does happen and stuff, I'm just like, oh, fuck yes, I'm on point today. Thank you, sir. Thank you. You just made my day.
So what are the comments like? Because when I'm out in public, I never see it.
Yeah, I pretty much never see it.
Often it's just a car driving past with a couple guys in it, and they just yell "woo" out the car window. Sometimes, sometimes it's honestly not usually that aggressive or anything. It's just like, "Hey, you look really nice today." I'm like, "Thank you," and then I just keep walking. Like, I don't, because sometimes you can tell that they want me to stop for a chat, but I'm like, "No, I've got shit to do." But thank you.
I think it's fair to say that some people get genuinely annoyed by it, and that sort of I can understand.
Yeah.
So are you more or less likely to be catcalled if you're breastfeeding?
Oh, mixing things.
Actively breastfeeding at that point in time, because if I got catcalled, then it'd be a bit creepy. On the other side, though, I did go up 5 cup sizes. So, yeah, they were pretty big for a while.
Oh.
So there's also that angle.
Okay, now we come to one that I would actually say is almost a reason in itself for female advocacy to still exist, and that's trafficking, like sex trafficking and human trafficking.
There was actually a bit of an argument between Russian Deadpool and Little Miss Anonymous on a bar hangout we did, and she made the point that there are men who are trafficked as well, but we never hear about them.
I think it's important to care about both sides, but it seems to happen a lot to women, and again, it's a pretty good reason to advocate.
I don't disagree with that. I think the point she was making was that with women it tends to be more sex trafficking, with men it's more labor trafficking.
Yeah, and again, address both sides of it. Be fair.
Yeah.
If feminists want to push trafficking as a major issue as opposed to like mansplaining, that would be an improvement at the very least.
Or manspreading, or
Or catcalling. Seriously,
Like,
they need to leave that
we've
one
heard
alone.
we've heard more about like mansplaining and manspreading than trafficking. I think.
And
You
air
know.
conditioning in offices is sexist. Remember?
Oh God.
Yeah,
No,
that was an article.
seriously,
There was an article in both England and in America. I think it's the Washington Post.
UK.
I mean, even if you address trafficking, like you could address trafficking like 1,000 times more than mansplaining and manspreading, and then you would have an appropriate balance.
Yeah, but that's difficult.
I
It's much
honestly
easier
think.
just to complain about worthless shit.
Well, I honestly
I know.
think that for the most part, they don't really give too much of a fuck about trafficking and developing country issues and everything. It's just they bring them up on occasion, so then they can be like, "No, we do care about that stuff. See, I mentioned it like 10 minutes ago for a half a minute."
To be super duper fair, I have seen instances of feminists and MRA types bringing up issues not because I think they care, but just because I think they want to bring it up for the purposes of looking a particular way. It does happen.
Yeah, I don't doubt that.
Yeah. I think we often, like people that are arguing against feminism, often bring up things that we're not necessarily advocating for or against ourselves. But it's more or less. I think it's just half the time it's just to demonstrate contrast as like in a rebuttal.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
keep on being told that I want to go back to the 1950s, which is strange because I'm anti-circumcision and I support fathers staying at home and looking after their kids and having custody of their children. I don't remember that happening in the 50s. Well, not that I was alive back then, but you know what I mean.
That's because a lot of people like that don't understand that you can have your own opinion without being in a hive mind.
Yeah. Okay. Another one that's a little bit reasonable to bring up is stalking and harassment. Number 7.
Define harassment.
Yeah, but men get stalked and harassed as well. If you look at the actual statistics.
So once again, I'm seeing a pattern here that often we can say that these issues can happen to both genders. They should both be addressed and be addressed fairly. There's no reason to say women can't or feminism can't advocate for these things on their own basis, but just don't block the other side and just don't try and make it all about your side.
Yeah, look, if they did that from the start and they did it fairly, there wouldn't be a need for a men's rights movement.
Pretty much.
If they didn't reinvent what harassment actually is as well, because that honestly, you can't ever actually tackle any issues when the argument is about the semantics of the issue.
Well, I remember there was this rather interesting little nugget going around recently of do you know Clementine Ford?
Yeah, unfortunately.
The one, the only.
God. We invited
I tried to
She
get
was-
her to block me. You're talking about MRA's trolling before. I did try to get her to block me. She didn't, though. I asked her to make me a sandwich.
She trolled
She
me.
blocked me. I was being
blocked
super
me.
duper reasonable, and she blocked me.
I said, can you please make me a sandwich signed the patriarchy?
You know, she inserted herself into a debate I was having on Twitter, was totally dismissive and annoying and not constructive, and then just blocked me because
Clementine?
I was responding.
Really?
Oh, Clementine.
That is
yeah, of
so
course.
unlike her.
But look, she brought up this really weird article about sexual harassment in virtual reality. Did you guys see that?
Oh God.
No.
Apparently, it was a really, really weird story that she brought up, but so many people just laughed at it, and it's like,
Wait,
what?
it's
okay.
pointless.
The guy was
Yeah.
being a total. The guy was being a total dick, absolutely. But to really compare it to actual sexual abuse and harassment that happens in real life, there are so many things that are really meaningfully different.
Oh yeah.
Like, you can't just switch the game off. Your physical safety is not in any kind of jeopardy whatsoever. It's essentially just some guy being a jerk. Those two things alone that I just mentioned, that's enough to say it is something totally different. Like, it's a totally different dynamic.
Yeah.
And it was just like, okay, now you're trying to say that this is sexual harassment and this is this kind of thing. That's like, you're just moving the goalposts so you can score more points, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, well, it's the idea that everything is oppression and everything is harassment and everything is the patriarchy.
But
Well,
stalking and harassment are, because the online world is making it so difficult to kind of deal with. Let's keep it to the IRL kind of level. On that level, again, both genders deal with it. It is a bit gendered. Men, I think, stalk women a bit differently, and women stalk men a bit differently. I think there's some differences.
Yeah, but we should acknowledge that women do it to men as well, and women do it to women, and men do it to men. But that's the side
like I said,
we
the whole
never
gender
hear
dynamic.
about.
And this is, again, feminism having an element of an issue that is worth trying to do something about, but only doing something about it in a certain way, through a particular lens. That's the problem.
Well, that's why I often find what they do is they say they're against gender roles, but they actually are supporting certain gender roles or creating a whole set of new gender roles, which is amazing when you think about it.
Yeah. Number 8 is Boko Haram.
Oh, just before you go on to that, one more thing.
Yep.
You said that you've been blocked by Clementine Ford. Have you been blocked by Steve Shives?
Yes.
Everyone. I've got actually a funny story about that today, because I watched Sargon's live stream with Griffix from the other day, and they were talking about Steve Shives blocking everyone, and I just randomly asked one of my co-workers to just log on to Twitter. They have no part in any of this entire thing at all. I'm just like, oh, can you just log on to Twitter and go to Steve Shives? And he's like, who the fuck's that? I'm like, can you just go there? I just want to see if you're blocked. He was.
Oh my god. See, I've actually talked to Steve on his YouTube, and I know he is an absolute pariah in the skeptic community. In my particular dealings with him, he has been okay. He has responded here and there, not all the time.
I'm sure he's a really nice guy if you agree with him.
I'd love to talk.
Yeah.
I'm still hopeful that one day, somehow, he will come on a stream with me and we'll have a decent, friendly conversation.
Well,
my door's always open, Steve.
My biggest dream for Steve is that one day he will be able to watch Angel without feeling like he's sexist.
Or being abused by his wife.
Yeah.
For doing so, yeah.
Oh, you offer an olive branch and then talk about him being abused by his wife, which is a common thread.
You obviously haven't seen the video. He did a video with his wife, and he said that he preferred Angel to Buffy, and he looked like he was in fear of his life because his wife accused him of being sexist for liking Angel over Buffy. It's a very weird video. It's a very famous video.
Memes on the internet is Steve Shives. Like, it's 3 pictures like a comic book, and the first one is him saying, "Can I laugh today?" to his wife, and the wife says, "Okay, I think you've earned that." So the second slide is him going, "Ah," and the third slide is, "That's enough mirth for now."
Yeah, basically, if the genders were reversed and it was a man acting that way to a woman, feminists would have been saying that she was abused in an abusive relationship. Because he did look fearful. He looked beaten down. It was sad. I feel for you, Steve, if you're listening.
I think
I've actually said before I feel sorry for him after watching that video. But
look, I personally, I feel like Steve is working really hard at a losing man's battle because he believes in it, because he's, people go on, he's losing subscribers, that kind of thing. He believes in what he's doing, and I can almost respect that in the same way that I respect Sargon for taking a stand on the issues he cares about, even when I think he's full of shit and being an asshole.
But Sargon talks to the other side. Steve doesn't. And
Sargon does.
Yeah, and like we were saying earlier, right? You have to speak to the other side to test your arguments to make sure that you're not making a mistake, or that
One thing that really bothered me was that he appeared a couple of times in that reasonable questions that SJWs have for anti-SJWs. What is the point of asking a question if you don't care what the answer is?
Yeah, because basically he was talking at us and not with us. And there are reasonable people on our side who are willing to talk to him. I mean, I've criticized him in the past, and rightly so. He's flung a lot of shit at the men's rights movement, and the vast majority of it was absolute bullshit with no evidence and no citations or anything to back up.
Like 5 terrible things about the MRM or MRA,
yeah, he's done
and
too.
just
And it was
certain things rather than proving them.
abuse and straw men and ad homs and nothing else. So he deserves criticism for that. But I'll talk to him reasonably on air.
I gotta love Vice's Sarkak of Akakard.
Hey guys, I'm gonna have to head off, but yeah, keep an eye out for a video in the next couple of days about the Sydney screening, and if you can mirror or whatever, because I just want to try and get as much attention to it as possible.
No problem.
It's Marra Jane, like Marra, right?
Yes.
I'll just subscribe and keep an eye out.
Easy as. Well, that just got me a new subscriber. Thank you.
No problem. I'm subscribing to so many people. Like, getting involved in all this stuff, like I have been over the past couple of weeks, is just meeting so many people, watching so many videos. I had to take a break from it, but it's been really interesting and exciting, really.
Yeah, you should have some time off.
Yeah.
It can get a bit heavy sometimes.
Sure, it can.
Okay, well,
but
enjoy
nice
the
to
rest
meet
of
you,
your
Mom.
stream. Yeah, you too.
Nice to meet you. Yeah.
Okay, bye, guys.
See you, Mara.
Bye.
Bye.
And she's still there.
Oh.
I think she's dropped out, but the icon's still there. I'm seeing it. I wonder if it's still in the live feed. It doesn't matter, but...
Okay.
Oh, no, it's gone from the live feed. So...
okay, there we go.
So what's the next one on the list?
Boko Haram. And just, if you don't mind this being a super long stream, we should go over a few men MRA issues for total balance and to, again, come back to the topic.
Yeah, that's fine. Boko Haram, who set boys on fire and killed them with machetes.
Yeah, Boko Haram, just general assholes? I mean...
Yeah, they slaughtered school-age boys, and there was, I think, one article in a newspaper about it, and then a couple of months later they kidnapped girls, and the world went nuts.
Yeah. Well, again, they're not wrong to criticize them, but again, approached holistically, like everything else.
Yeah, look, I think they should be criticized for kidnapping the girls, obviously, but what about the boys months earlier? Why didn't anyone give a shit about them?
Yeah.
Maybe
and you might have helped the girls if we had given a shit. Because
I was just about to say that. Maybe if we addressed the boy issue, they wouldn't have kidnapped the girls. Who knows?
Who knows? I mean, maybe not, but at least that is something you can say about a lot of things. If it's hurting men, but we only start talking about it until it hurts women, it would have helped the women as well as the men to have talked about it when it was only hurting the men.
Yeah, maybe that's a good way to get certain people involved. I don't know.
So I feel like we're letting Silhouette Man drop out a little bit.
England,
you can.
Are you there still?
Yeah, Mr. Silhouette. To you, Bane. Yes, I have been listening intently. I just I
You
didn't.
just agree and agreeing and not
I-
feeling the need to say anything.
I didn't want to interrupt. As far as I'm aware, it's called a chat with Josh, and I didn't want to take away from that.
Well, I instigated it, but I was again saying in general to Bane, invite whoever. I'm happy with that. And look, that brings us to another topic. Low rape conviction rate. Ooh, this is a can of worms.
Yeah.
Let's not. I'm sure we can go in great detail on this one, but I don't want to actually spend too long on it. Because it's probably a very deep and tricky issue to get
Can
into.
I break it down very simply then?
Yeah, sure.
All right. The real way we should be looking at it is we know that a certain percentage are false allegations, right? And we know that a certain percentage are proven to be true, but the vast majority are in the middle, in that grey area where we don't know if they're false or true, right? That's the reality of it. The way feminists see it is they say there's only a small percentage of false allegations, and they tend to minimize what the actual statistics say. They try to get it down to 2% if they can. And then they assume that the other 98% has to be real. Even if someone's gone to court and it's been proven that they didn't do it or whatever, it's still in their minds has to be an actual true rape.
And I think the other thing is that it's just a very difficult crime to conclusively prove, isn't that right?
No, exactly. It's hard to prove that it did happen, and it's also hard to prove that it's a false allegation because often it's two people
the
in
awful
private.
thing. The really, really awful thing is by nature it happens in private, and secondly, it's most of the time that it happens in the world, it's a pleasurable thing that people enjoy. I mean, there's like when
We're talking
people
about sex, not rape.
Yeah, make that distinction.
Yes, I'm talking about sex, as in the problem is it's so hard to prove when sex becomes rape because it's an act that people do consensually. Unlike, say, arson, right? People don't consensually burn their house down, kind of thing, or murder. People don't consensually let someone murder them. Of course, someone's going to say, "Oh, but what about if they did it for the insurance?" Okay, let's just remember the very, very vast majority of times people don't consensually do these things. However, the very, very vast majority of the time that sex happens, it is consensual.
It's such a weird, this whole the thing to remember is that the sex and rape have so many gray areas. Like when it happens and it's like awful, we got to call a spade a spade. That's terrible. Let's deal with it. Let's convict. Hopefully there's proof. You know what I mean? But there, like Julian Assange case was something like she decided after the fact that she wasn't very happy with it, and was sort of hanging out at parties or something, and hadn't really let him know clearly, or at all, I believe. You gotta, to me,
when you kind of conflate, a horrible person coming along and attacking a woman and doing that to them, and you conflate that with a sort of after the fact, not feeling very sure about it kind of thing, I don't think you should treat them as the same, if you know what I mean.
There was a case.
It doesn't matter how you feel about it. You did consent. You could say that about gambling. Oh, if I'd known that I was going to lose that round, I wouldn't have gambled. So give me my money back.
Yeah.
There was a case I read in a law review. I think it was late last year or something like that, about a student at a American university. He was blind drunk. His girlfriend's roommate performed oral sex on him when he was passed out. She left afterwards. She texted another guy arranging for him to come back to her dorm room so they could have sex later. She fell out with that group of friends, probably because she, raped her roommate's boyfriend. And years later, she fell in with the social justice crowd, and they convinced her that she was the rape victim in that case. She brought it to attention of the university. There was a university trial, with no lawyers or legal representation.
This is the thing that makes me feel crazy. How do you? In what universe is it appropriate to if it's a rape trial or something like that, which is a serious thing?
Yeah,
like, let's
have it at a
have
uni.
have no confusion about it. It's a serious thing. It can be a terrible crime, but it's difficult to know the full story all the time. But doing it in a university,
he wasn't allowed to present
trial?
evidence. He had text messages, right? She had sent text messages to someone saying how guilty she felt afterwards because he was passed out.
Yeah,
right, which would make her the rapist, but he wasn't allowed to present these because he's the accused. It's just it's crazy shit.
Not allowed to. Well, this is again coming back to that whole when you set up systems that are meant to help a victim or something, but you make them easy to abuse, you just fuck things up more.
Yeah, and there was another case where some guy looked like someone's rapist. So it wasn't the same guy, it just looked like him. And she got him banned from being near her in the university. The guy hadn't done anything wrong, right? So that affected where he is living, where he is working, what classes he could go to.
Hello, we have someone I think I've heard of before, Peach Bailey. Hello?
Yeah. We're both friends with Peach, yeah.
Okay.
What about Peach?
All right, so, well, just she's on the feminist side, isn't she?
No, not at all. Not
I'm sorry, the complete mistake of mine.
Are you thinking about the right Peach Bailey? Is there another one out there?
I've only heard the name in general.
Australia by any chance?
I've only heard the name, and I'm seeing I moused over her. And it said, I will be commenting on a range of topics, including language, feminism, social justice, and religion. That's not entirely dissimilar to some SJW-ish type descriptions. Yeah, we're giving the chat a good laugh from that. Sorry, Peach Bailey.
I was actually, after the stream, I was actually going to send you one of her videos on Twitter. She actually rang up. She rang up some men's helplines trying to find, how many places there are for domestic violence victims, male domestic violence victims. And she just basically ran into brick wall after brick wall. Really good video.
Okay. Well, that would be worth looking at.
Yeah. So definitely not a feminist.
Yes.
She'll get
but hey, at least we all got a good laugh out of that.
Is she isn't she friends with a feminist called Eggy though, Mr. Silhouette?
Yeah, quite close. We're almost the same person.
That's a personal joke, don't worry.
Would she want to come on for even a bit? I don't know. I'm just putting that out there.
I think she's at work at the moment.
Yeah.
Oh, shame.
Because I saw before she was on Twitter and she said she wanted to cancel up the chat or something, but she was at work or something like that.
Yeah, she works in a brothel, so they must have a slow day right now if she's watching us.
Oh my god. I remember, my inaugural Twitter argument was principally with a sort of a sex worker who was very highly feminist. And then it extended to do any of you know what was her name? Ava Grace VIP.
No.
Then there was Amy Jo Ryan jumped in. And then finally Clementine Ford. And they were the main participants.
Sorry, what was this? What were they?
This is sorry. I've referenced it a little bit. My big inaugural Twitter argument on feminism.
Oh, okay. Yes. Yeah.
Teal Deer is the biggest feminist I've ever seen. Yeah. Wow. I actually want to bring up another argument that I had, which was a little disheartening, but I think I wanted to have it. Maybe I got a little annoyed at the end and said, I don't know. What I said wasn't terrible. I just probably said I wasn't offensive or insulting. It was merely, but whatever. So Allison from Honey Badger Radio.
Yep.
So it had been brought up that Drawn and a couple others had really hated Chrisiosity's question and weren't interested. And I just wanted to see the source of that. And I made a comment on the Rant Zerker where they addressed the questions for anti-SJWs. And I ended up getting into a debate with Alison, a relatively long one. And she just couldn't get point where she could see ever cooperating with feminists on anything. It was too, like, I was trying to make the point, what if you can moderate them? What if you can get some progress? What if it just improves the situation a little bit? But it was all, no, one analogy she used was like, they're like an abusive mother. You don't work with them. You stop them. If someone is holding a gun, you have to force them to put it down before they can help. And it was a shame because it's like, we can criticize feminism all day, and we have been, but this is kind of a bit close-minded, I have to say. And I made the point that you got to put aside your discomfort to be able to work with whoever you need to in order to get the results for the people who need them. I have heard from a man who's kind of a bit disadvantaged and struggling that seeing feminists and non-feminists and anti-feminists work together on men's issues is actually really inspiring, and he really is happy because of that. When I look at that and then I see people just rejecting it because they can't stand the other side or believe there's no redeeming people in the other side, it worries me.
Let's look at it another way. I'm an atheist, right?
Yeah.
So I could work with Christians on certain things, but our worldviews will never really meet. You know what I mean? I should say I can work with some Christians. So I don't speak for Alison. I know Karen quite well. I don't know Alison as well. But maybe she's referring to the ideology being in the way. Because that is the big hurdle.
One can make the argument that the ideology is in the way. But then you have to start to say, well, then how do we improve the ideology or remove it or rehabilitate it?
I agree. And that's
that happens through engagement.
I've been focused on, yeah. I totally agree. But I do think that one of the reasons why the ideology is shifting is because of some of the hardcore criticism, but it's also, I think, people in the middle ground as well. I think it's a two-pronged attack or solution, maybe. Yeah.
I tend to come more on the be open to dialogue, be open to working together. Other people tend to come more on the heavy criticism. I think it's the dialogue element we need to work on more, but that's pushing
just to interrupt. You're coming into it in the last 2 weeks, right? I've
been watching for a while.
Okay, but if you had come into it, say, 4 years ago, your attitude might have been very different. I mean, I've been talking to feminists for the last year now, maybe. I think the first hangout I did with a feminist was December last year with the Skeptic Feminists.
Yeah.
But for years now, the men's rights movement have been asking feminists to come and talk to us for years. And the first one I think did it was Kevin Logan. Well, no, there was a rad femme who spoke with Dean Esme when there was bomb threats at the first International Men's Rights Conference. She came on Dean's channel and spoke to him. But that and Kevin Logan, I think, were the firsts. They ignored us. They condemned us. They slurred us. They They fought straw men. They did everything except chat to us. And eventually they got to the point where there was no choice but to chat to us.
I have hassled the like, for example, I mentioned at one point, you know, I've basically just commented on mostly a couple other avenues, but I've commented on ranting feminists.
Just ask, just out of curiosity, Josh. Where are you from? Are you American?
Oh, my father is American, and I have a bit of an accent, but I am Australian. Lived here basically my whole life.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Because Peach and I were debating whether you're American or Australian.
Where is that in the chat or somewhere else?
I was discussing it with her personally.
Was that on Skype? Because I
okay.
thought I heard a Skype thing go off.
Yeah, it was Skype.
Okay. Yeah, there you go, Peach Bailey. Your secret, you know, backdoor shenanigans of talking about my accent have been revealed.
Well, actually, I think the first stream I did with Peach, I brought up the question that she might be a secret feminist. Sent into the trait. So we're on to you, Pete.
Well, you know, Demotivator was on your stream.
Yep.
I suspect I can get, you know, she went on with Bearing. I don't know how well that went or not, but I would hope that she'd be open to talking with others who aren't necessarily on their side. So there's another avenue. Christiosity is the one who made the olive branch. Again, maybe she can be persuaded. I think you guys might go, oh, geez, because I know there's a lot of hate for her out there. Personally, she did a nice thing for me, and I'm sure she said something somewhere that I people really disagree with. But Christy Winters, even if you know there's things that you can criticize,
I would talk to
not.
Christy if she ever wanted to do a chat. I would talk to her.
I think you should.
I've criticised her in the past, but I'd still talk to her.
I think if you ever do, Bane, you should then invite on Little Miss Anonymous. I heard that she wants to speak to Christy Winters.
No, I would not invite a non-Christy Winters stream.
Well, look,
although it would be amusing.
I'm doing a stream with Demotivator, and I'm doing maybe a stream with. Let me see if I can bring it up. Who is maybe in there? I think Russ Williams brought it up with me. So American Anarchist, who you've done with.
Yep.
Okay, he's invited me to a hangout with Christiosity, Skeptor, and himself. Come on, brain. To just sort of talk about the group and stuff. You know, maybe see if I can persuade people to come on. And one thing people have got to realize, right? I keep using that inappropriately. People on either side, when they address each other through like a video that they've made, they're often more confrontational and dare I say attacking. But generally in streams, people are much more reasonable. You know, they're having a conversation. It works differently. So people can probably learn to understand that at least in a stream, you're likely to, you know, have a better time than just responding videos throwing back and forth.
I think streams are good for discussing ideas and concepts.
Yeah.
And videos are good for presenting evidence and arguments.
Yeah, that seems to be the case.
It's hard to use citations in a live stream.
True.
Here's a 140-page report, Josh. Can you read it in the next 30 seconds and then get back to me? I mean, it just doesn't work, you know.
Come on, brain. I keep going off. I keep going to say something and forgetting. No, it always happens.
So I'm really lazy. I am terrible when it comes to like shall we say sort of academic rigor and research and all that kind of thing. I like to check here and there. I like to examine. You know, I've got an okay mind, so I can sort of make my judgments on what I see. Like, does this survey seem biased? Does this sample size seem tiny? Like, but I just am not that inclined to the heavy research, which is part of why I suggested this, just so I can learn a bit more. I'm more an ideas person, and I'm more a culture person. Those are more my interests, musician and a few of the other things that I do. So yeah, it's there are plenty of really good people who do really good work with research, but I'm a bit lazy. I should admit.
Well, I think both aspects are important.
Yeah, I mean, like with everything, you need combined and varied approaches. Which is where, again, coming back to polarization, the whole polarization thing just destroys that ability to come at things from different perspectives. I remember an argument being made about diversity, where you can get a very difficult kind of diversity thing where if you enforce certain, like, we need to have this person from this group and this person from that group, but if they all think the same, what's the point? Someone made the point that diversity of ideas and backgrounds and skills is more important.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's why I often try to, when I do serious streams, I try to get a mix of people with different opinions and different point of views. My open house ones are more just about community and chatting and things like that.
Yeah.
I'll get
we
you
should
on one
probably
of them too.
Sure. We should probably start thinking about wrapping this up. I don't know how much more you want to address. Maybe we should just finish with something on the topic. Something.
The main. I think you want the main men's rights issues.
Yeah, I mean, we'll finally get around to it. Why don't we? So let's say, off the top of your head, give me some of the strongest arguments and issues that you really believe need addressing.
Well, it's easy because I talk about them all the time. The sentencing gap, so men get longer sentences, twice as likely to get jail time. I think it's 63% longer sentences for the same crime committed by women. Male genital mutilation, it's a violation of human rights, which doesn't serve any medical function. Male homelessness, depending on where it is in the Western world, I think it's roughly 70 to 80% of the homeless are male, but tend to get less or services than women. One of the excuses is that services for women include women with children, but the actual truth is that single women with no children get special services too. So you would assume that it would be families or parents with children, because there might be men who are homeless with children as well. So once again, that's gendered, even though women are the minority.
Men's homelessness actually would be a pretty good thing for the group I'm in to address.
Yep.
No one's talked about it much yet, and it should be a new issue, I think.
Well, I've got someone working on a segment for that right now. She actually
sent men's issues matter.
Yeah, she actually sent me a message during the the hangout. So I've been on Skype a little bit while I've been talking to you.
Oh, cool.
So hopefully I'll be able to put that in the next day or two. She's probably listening. So next one, male suicide.
Yep.
Workplace deaths is also one that comes up. Now, I saw a video mirrored on the Skeptic Feminist channel about workplace deaths, which was done by the Ranting Feminist. And
yeah, the whole men are cared for in society thing. I saw that.
Yeah, but she totally missed the point. The point of why we bring it up is because, well, the wage cap, right? Men typically earn more money, and one of the main reasons is because we do more dangerous work and tend to die more at work. I think it's 93% of workplace deaths are men. So it's not surprising that men earn more money.
It's a reason.
It's a reason, yeah, but it's definitely an important one.
It is. I think it's
The
a
other
difficult
reason,
sell.
the other reason we bring it up is because the argument that all men are privileged, no matter what.
Yeah. See, I would like to get patriarchy theory to sort of recognize, this is more about power and who has power and money than male or female. Like, so much more of what you're bringing up is about power.
You should watch a BBC documentary called Angry Women. I think it's called Angry Women.
Yeah.
It's about the left in England in the 70s and 80s, and it talks about a radical aspect of feminism, how it came out of the communist movement, basically cultural Marxists, and they basically.
Oh no, sorry.
They basically shifted the blame from rich capitalists, the upper class, onto males, and took the whole model. It's a very interesting documentary. It's got interviews with the people involved, so it's not some conspiracy bullshit.
Well, I'm not a fully Marxist person. Just like a lot of movements, it has its elements of truth, but probably not the best ways of trying to do it. I mean, when we look at how, I have my sympathies for socialism and some alternative to capitalism, but the hard stone cold truth is they haven't worked out all that well all that often.
I'm for a capitalist system with a reasonable socialist safety net for those who need it.
That's sort of, I think capitalism is like
and that's going to get me in trouble from both sides, both the capitalists and the socialists. But
see,
fuck you.
My big thing is we should be a little less ideological. Like, it should all be, like some people are, it should all be private institutions and business and all that kind of thing. And other people get very statey. To me, it's more like we got to just improve both, and we got to improve both a lot. Like, wouldn't it be better not to have all state or all corporation, but a mix, and make them good at what they do? Like a highly democratic state that's efficient, and companies that are well regulated so they don't do harm, but are still making a lot of innovation and providing services well. That, to me, is what we want, right?
Yeah, look, I agree. I agree. I think we agree on that. Back to the list.
Yeah, sure.
What have I said? What haven't I said? Sorry, it's getting late. I've had a long day. Father's rights, of course.
Yeah.
So we think that there should be 50-50 custody to begin with. Right? That's the default. And then if one parent wants less, then that can be negotiated. Or if there's a reason why one parent should have less, then that can be negotiated. But you should start with the 50-50 starting point, as opposed to mothers automatically getting the child. Now, we are told that one of the reasons why women typically earn less is because it's expected that they take time off work to spend time with their children. Reality is they generally want to. But if we gave men more opportunity to do that, then it would, decrease the earnings gap, wouldn't it?
Yeah. It's that's an interesting way to combine the issues, and I think there's some merit to it. But to me, fundamentally, it should probably be the default starting point, 50-50, and then look at the circumstance.
Yeah, I agree. I added the wage gap thing because I usually use that argument to try to persuade feminists, because some of their arguments are very contradictory. I don't know if you've noticed, but
sorry, whose?
Feminists.
Oh, some of their, yeah. I thought you said some of her.
No. Some of feminist arguments are very contradictory.
Yeah.
I'm sure they'd say the same about us, but
yeah. It's I think it's really good again, this is me taking my middle ground stance, but just these conversations being out there and existing. I know there are a lot of people like you got some shit, I think, for having who was it, American Anarchist, and maybe Demotivator on. Like some comments will be, oh, you know, what's this cuck doing here? Cuck is such a funny word. You know,
I use it as a joke.
To me, it's a joke.
I start using the term cuckgina, which is a combination of cuck and mangina, which is obviously a joke, but I'm sure someone would take it serious. But anyway.
Yeah. I think that is a problem, that there is a lack of understanding that the skeptic side, if you will, is often just, when they're being, you know, at their worst, they're really just joking, and people do understand that they're joking.
Yeah, we call ourselves shitlords. That's because
yeah,
shitlords, and we adopted it as a fuck you.
Yeah. Okay.
I think we're getting through the list. I don't want to take you up too longer because you sound tired, and it's been a pretty good stream, I feel. And I don't want to make it go on endlessly so that it gets dicey.
Well, it's been an enjoyable chat. I didn't think it would go on this long, but it's been good. I think it's been productive. Okay.
I have a video called 10 Male Privileges, which lists 10 things that affect men. If anybody's interested in more of a list of what Bane was talking about.
And you'll be able to see it on my channel in a little while after the stream. I've actually uploaded it, but I haven't made it live.
So just, shameless plug, but it was just because you were saying, you know, what list would rival the Huffington Post one. Well, I have 10 of them for anyone who's interested.
Okay, interesting.
I recognize
I'll have to look it up.
Male victims of rape and domestic abuse as well, because society tends not to believe that they can even exist. Male disposability, so males being less, cared for in society than women. Is there any I've missed, Sil?
I think you've given a pretty comprehensive rundown. There's probably a couple, but
medical spending, maybe.
Violent crime disproportionately affects men.
Yep.
Internet harassment affects men more. Women get sexual harassment online more, but men get every other type of harassment more.
And I think 40% of the harassment towards women is by other women, from the top of my head.
And
something like that.
Yes, and also men's prostate cancer is woefully underfunded compared to breast cancer.
It's a really interesting form of looking, like, I mean, because I've thought about that too. Like the female cancers get all this attention, like this the pink ribbon day or something like that. I don't know if we can have the brown smear day or something, but something maybe. That's a horrible joke, but
it's a pretty shitty joke, actually. Sorry, I had to go there.
Yeah, that was fantastic. So, but basically, there is a real sense of different expectations and different, like, in society, and it's more complex than the patriarchy model, but it's more complex than the gynocentric model. It's that holistic thing, like.
Well, it's something that myself and Dr. Random McCam have both talked about before.
I should get more interested in him. I what I've seen looks pretty interesting. He seems to really care.
Yeah, no, he's a good guy. Who knows? Maybe you'll end up on a stream with him one day.
Well, that'd be great.
He occasionally pops into some of my streams. So.
I remember one of the good things Sargon does is occasionally spooks his buddies, and he was one that got a glowing recommendation.
There's one last one that is worth mentioning, which is that boys are massively suffering in education, and girls are outnumbering men in college to the point that it's quite often 60-40 these days.
Yeah, it's concerning. I wonder what the solutions are, and how soon it will be taken seriously as an issue. Which brings up a sense of recrimination that sometimes exists as a justification for, like, I remember bringing up, oh, why are boys doing so badly in school? That's kind of got to be addressed, and someone sort of laughing it off, and I was thinking, well, why? Like, do you actually want to hold these boys accountable for whatever you think has been done in history?
No, they're looking at boys as broken girls.
Yeah.
Boys and girls
One of
are
my
totally different
favorites
in
is,
school.
if girls aren't doing well, it's because the system is flawed, and if boys aren't doing well, it's because they're shit.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's almost like that, but it is a bit more nuanced.
When you have like a 4-year-old or a 3-year-old hugging their teacher and getting accused of sexual harassment and things like that, it becomes a crazy world. Not to forget the amount of school children in America who are on drugs because they're a bit more active than their female counterparts.
Yeah, ADHD is another whole can of worms. It feels like, where did it come from? We just sort of all of a sudden have decided, oh, there's this big. I mean, it has to be admitted, school life is an incredibly unnatural creation.
Well, I don't know. I don't know where the whole thing came from. Maybe it's an increase in sugar in the diet. Maybe we're looking at boys and saying they should be more like girls and less active. I don't know. Maybe attention spans have shortened because of the modern age. Who knows? Maybe it's a combination of all those things. Maybe it's
probably some sort of combination. Yeah. And with ADHD, like I think, I mean, I heard one interpretation of it where someone came in and they were being looked at as having ADHD, but one doctor happened upon them and their interpretation was, oh, they're a dancer. And they got them interested in dancing and they did really well. And this to me starts to say we need a more diverse. I think we should actually give children a lot more choice in the way that like, there are some things that should be non-negotiable, okay, but then we should have a lot more flexibility. Like, if their interests really go a certain way, let them pursue their interests. I mean, you can always come back around and learn something else you need to learn later. But if someone becomes disaffected from school in general, which is kind of what happened to me, it does a lot of damage. It's worth just trying to get them on board before you try and teach them what they supposedly have to know. And I don't know if much that I was taught in school or anyone is taught in school is stuff we have to know, so much as it is just what education has become.
Yeah, and you're from Victoria, like myself, aren't you?
Yes.
Yeah. What do you think of the feminism being introduced to high school kids?
Yeah, respectful relationships, right?
That's have you read the actual thing?
I should. So you've looked at it properly? What?
Yeah, I haven't gone all the way through it, but there's some interesting stuff in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would be. Someone should make a proper video on what it is rather than just sort of wondering, oh, it sounds a bit sus.
I started one, but I've just had so much going on, I haven't been able to finish it. But it's interesting. Yeah. They describe they describe sex as, male and female, a physical thing, but then they describe gender as a social construct, which I find very interesting, because if gender is entirely a social construct, then trans people can't be real.
Well, that's exactly what I said, that they've never been able to reconcile to me how they can be pro-transgender and also pro gender being a social construct. If we are born neutral and then we get taught to be a boy or a girl, then someone can't be born into the wrong body because there are no differences.
Well, that's an interesting point, and I would also add that there is a lot of evidence saying, look, if it really was, tabula rasa with regard to gender, and it really doesn't seem to be. I mean, there is so much evidence to say, no, people have really strong tendencies according to their genes and according to their genders, and it would be great if, in a way, in a certain way of looking at things, it would be great if there was true blank slate and we could all become whatever we wanted to. But it doesn't appear to be the case.
What I believe is that gender is a complex combination of genetics and societal influences, and how much of each probably comes down to an individual thing. Nature. Yeah, and some people might be 90% of one and 10% of the other. Some might be 50-50. I mean, I think it really comes down to an individual thing, because we all have different genetics and different social influences.
Everyone is saying fuck Melbourne and Melbourne sucks, and I just want to defend Melbourne for a second. You can say, oh, there are annoying SJWs here, blah, 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 blah. It is, by a lot of metrics, one of the best countries to live in, and frankly, if you want to have a cultural life like I do, again, very good place to live.
I don't think they said fuck Australia, they said fuck Melbourne.
Yeah, I'm defending Melbourne. Because Melbourne is one of the best parts of Australia.
Melbourne is, by a lot of statistics, a great country to live in.
Yeah,
Melbourne is, sorry.
City.
Melbourne is, by a lot of statistics, a great city to live in. Whoops.
Yeah, but Melbourne's so good it should be its own country. So I think that's the point he's trying to make.
I think
Melbourne's so good it should be its own country.
Sugar Tits live in Melbourne.
Yep, they do.
Yeah. So we're not all SJWs. Hashtag not all Melburnians.
So, do we have any more items for the list? Maybe demonization of masculinity.
Yeah. So this is something I wanted to address with Emma and our good and bad of masculinity and femininity kind of plan, which I should really get onto, by the way. I've been putting it off. But it's I remember trying to put forward the idea of I was again harkening back to my Twitter debate. They were saying toxic masculinity was the cause of a lot of male issues, or basically all of them. That was their argument, And I was trying to say, well, look, it's a consequence of society and a lot of factors. Maybe, and at some point I posited the idea, is there such a thing as toxic femininity? Does femininity have any negative factors? And, they dared me to try and tell them some of these factors, and I decided it would probably be better to not. But it is an interesting question. If you can have toxic masculinity, it can't just all be bad. Why would it develop to just all be bad? There are probably redeeming aspects, and then there are probably negative aspects and positive of femininity.
Here's what they do, right? If you list the positive aspects of masculinity, they tend to say, oh, but those aren't unique to masculinity, so females can have them too, so they're not really male aspects. But then they go on to list the negative aspects of masculinity and say that they're only relevant to masculinity. And if you point out that they can also be relevant in femininity, they say, well, that's really females being forced into the male role, and it's not really their fault. I can't think of her name because her surname has 16 letters in it, but her first name's Pauline, and she's the only woman ever convicted of genocide in the Rwandan massacre. She was a minister of women's issues or something like that. So I like to think of her as a feminist. I'm joking. I don't know if she actually was, but
yeah.
But during the massacre, what she did was she got a whole heap of fleeing people, women and children. She lured them into a stadium where she said they'd be safe, and then had them massacred. Now, I've brought this up before as an example of an evil woman doing something wrong, and I've got back, but it's not her fault. She was just fulfilling the male role. She was forced into that because of male politics and
the Nazis were following
patriarchy.
orders.
Yeah, exactly. But you get that type of thing all the time, and it's bullshit.
And again, you got to come back to the good old fashioned counter argument against the Nazis. You should have taken the moral position and known better. And again, you can make arguments. They really couldn't do that; they would be killed or something. But I think fundamentally, if you're going to take part in genocide, you can at least resign. If you actually can see what's wrong with it, rather than just being forced to do it. What rubbish.
I don't know. Look, I'm not defending any Nazis who took part in the genocide, but
no.
But some of them might have got a bullet in the back of their head if they didn't. So
it makes their decision understandable, if still not easy to digest.
Yeah, I'm guessing there was those who were true believers, and then there was those who thought they had no choice but to go along out of fear or whatever.
Yeah. And it's worth making the distinction, even if they still were both doing horrible things. And look, we're getting a bit too tangenty now, and I really don't want to look like I'm defending Nazis.
We know you are. Did you hear about Man Boobs?
Who's Man Boobs? Is he the guy that runs We Hunted the Mammoth or something?
Yeah, the site used to be called Man Boobs. And he changed it to We Hunted the Mammoth because I think some people didn't take Man Boobs seriously. I don't know why.
It's not much of an improvement.
No. Well, it's a little bit of an improvement.
Maybe.
Should Man Boobs be able to breastfeed in public? That's what I want to know.
Oh, God. Now you reminded me of that scene in Family Guy where Stewie gets breastfed by Yeah.
Hello, Dave Futrell, if you're listening.
What do you mean, Of course he is.
I've had a couple of articles written about me on Man Boobs.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Anything nice?
One had an article with myself, Davis Arini, and Mundane Matt, and basically the gist of it was, why are they all using skulls? Maybe they're the bad guys. I think that
was with that guy, H Bomber guy doing with all the skulls?
Seriously, what is it with you guys and skulls?
And then he turned it around to what is with you guys and committing actual crimes, and it's like,
it was meant to be hilarious. The first time, what's it with you guys and skulls? The second time, what's it with you guys and skulls? So the third time, you know what he's gonna say, but then he says, what's it with you and assaulting police officers? Oh my God, so funny.
I mean, if we're going to go around saying your movement is
assaulting police officers, that's a bad thing now, because I'm pretty sure you guys were defending it like 2 minutes ago.
Yeah, it's a bit ridiculous. Look, I'm sure
another article about me on Man Boobs mentioned myself and God, who was it? Stefan Molyneux. Basically, there was some pickup artist in Canada who had allegedly assaulted a woman, and apparently he had liked one of my videos and one of Stefan's videos.
Oh wow!
Not subscribed.
Conspiracy.
Not subscribed to us, but had left a like on our videos. So obviously, Dave Futrell went through his Google Plus, trying to find some kind of dirt to link him to us or whatever.
That's such dirt digging desperation, and it just is sick.
Well, especially because we have such control over who likes our video. If someone gives it a thumbs up that we don't like, we can remove it, apparently.
Yeah, I think I've thumbed up Kevin Logan's videos before. Not all of them, but the occasional one.
But what I mean,
I think
is it anonymous who thumbs it up, but also you can't do anything about it. You can't remove a thumb up.
I think there's a problem with the whole collective responsibility thing. Like, how can a group of people really be held responsible for one of their individuals? Like, in some cases, it makes sense to do that in certain like authority structures and what have you.
But the guy wasn't even
But,
subscribed. He had watched one video, as far as I could
Do
tell.
you even know who he? Like, you didn't even get a notification that this guy liked your video, right?
No, I had no idea who he was until
just an anonymous like, as far as you're concerned, if you even noticed.
Well,
So,
that's actually basically you were saying you know, that collective guilt. I completely agree with that, right? Because feminists will say, what about this person? What about that person? They were an MRA as well. I can see where they're coming from, but I think realistically you can only ascribe collective guilt when that person has a lot of influence within the movement. If there's someone who just calls themselves an MRA and they do something terrible, they are not representative of MRAs. However, if there's someone who is lauded by MRAs and they do something terrible, that's different. So, you know, quite often when I point out to feminists, what about Julie Bindel? What about Clementine Ford? What about Mary Koss? Or what about Catherine McKinnon? They will say, oh yeah, but what about X, Y, or Z person who said they were an MRA that one time?
Nowhere.
It's like, no, but there is a huge difference, which is that the person who said they were an MRA that one time had no influence in the movement, and therefore they don't represent anyone. Whereas people like Catherine McKinnon and Andrea Dworkin and Clementine Ford, they have huge followings. You can't pretend that they don't represent feminists, because they do, and plenty of feminists will happily say that Clementine Ford speaks for them.
It's an interesting distinction to make. I think between the powerful people having a degree of responsibility as compared with just some random person who doesn't really have power within the movement, then being, you know, blamed, then leading to the blame of the movement because of some small association.
What is representing feminists if you don't, like, you literally represent feminists? Like, that's what she's doing. That's what all of them are doing. They are literally being one voice that many others want to speak for them. You know, so when we get accused, that one guy who did, you know, like, or who was screaming in a McDonald's or something like that, that's different than when we're talking about, you know, Julie Bindel, who is a very, very famous feminist in the UK and has written articles for The Guardian and goes to speeches and things like that. Like, that's different. If you want to talk about, you know, Christina Hoff Sommers or Milo Yiannopoulos, then fair enough, because they do represent us, because we actually give them money and give them attention and ask them to speak on our behalf.
They're influential, basically.
Yeah, so it's just, that is one thing that upsets me or frustrates me when I say to feminists, what about Andrea Dworkin? What about Catherine McKinnon? They say, oh, they don't represent feminism. Well, yes, they do. And plenty of feminists have agreed with them.
I would still suggest, though, that the whole collective accountability kind of thing, I think people do have the right to say, I want to be a part of this overall movement, but this particular leader, he doesn't represent me so well. I can disassociate myself a bit. I think that still exists, and I think it's
the same people who do that will claim that people who have nothing to do with the men's rights movement are MRAs. Like the guy in McDonald's. How exactly is that guy advocating for the rights of men?
By just sort of having a scene. I know.
Well, as in, if feminism is the beautiful, wonderful, egalitarian movement that they claim it is, they will be able to name more philanthropic leaders than I can name misanthropic leaders. And so far, they haven't. So far, they possibly come up with one or two who I then look into, and it turns out they were actually not quite as philanthropic as they said they were. But yes, if feminism is this wonderful, glittering, shining organization that spans the globe, they should be able to name hundreds of philanthropic people who lead it off the top of their head. Whereas they can't. When I say, okay, who does represent feminists? They go, ooh, I do?
Well, I see where you're coming from, but I would still say that the whole concept of individuals account for other individuals' actions simply because they both claim to be part of a group, it's not the way it should work. It's not the way ethics should work, I think.
But who, other than these women who are getting paid to get on stage and speak,
I think you can criticize them, and I think you can say, why do you want to be part of this group when you have so many people that are not so great in it? That's a fine thing to do. But when it comes to like holding accountable, and that applies to their criticism of the MRM. I mean, they would almost like to hold accountable, like what's his name, David Futrell, We Hunted the Mammoth, this guy. I'm sure anybody accountable that he could for any action taken that he disagrees with or that he thinks could be prosecuted or whatever. But this whole, oh God. This gets into bigger questions of can men as a collective group be held accountable for negative actions taken by men in the past?
Men aren't an ideology that you can choose to be a part of. Feminism is.
That is an interesting point, but I still think I'm not really against you on this one. I'm trying to suggest that there is a part of an idea of a sort of now we're having payback. Now feminism is riding high,
it seems too much like trying to have your cake and eat it. That one feminist, goes to the White House on behalf of all other feminists and demands special treatment for women. They get it. And then all the other feminists say, oh, that wasn't us, that was just her. They take the perks, but deny the responsibility. And that seems like having your cake and eating it. I mean, in The Prince, the book by Niccolo Machiavelli, he actually says a great way to be a dictator is to let someone else do your dirty work and then hang them out to dry. So it seems a lot like that these women, Anita and Clementine Ford and Julie Bindel and Catherine McKinnon and Andrea Dworkin and Germaine Greer, that they are doing the dirty work, and then other feminists receive the benefits but disassociate themselves. If feminism is as good as you say it is, point me to the ones that are doing
I'm not saying it's good. Listen to what I've been saying.
I'm not talking about you specifically. I just mean as in, if I can name all of these people who are doing bad things, why can't you name all of the people who are doing good things?
They have a different worldview is part of it, I think, and they see certain kinds of advocacy as being good when sometimes it's just.
If I can name more bad influential people than you can name good influential people within an organization, it seems as though the organization might be more bad than good.
Vice has said something to me. I have to think about this more before I come to a conclusion. Say it with me, Josh. I think can
we all just agree on one thing? That manspreading is the most important issue faced in the Western world, and we should come together to deal with it.
Bane, for fuck's sake, we were having a really serious conversation about air conditioning. Fuck's sake, man.
I read about that in that paper from England.
Oh, for fuck! Oh, what is wrong with the world? You're just fueling Otter. Oh, she's got. Oh, fuck this. I'm never coming on a stream with anybody ever again.
I think we should start wrapping it up though, because
the worst part is the worst part is that genderless shadow is fucking English. That's the worst part.
But what do you guys reckon? Is there anything else we really need to address, or are we just sort of padding it out a bit too much?
No, I think we need
to done good. I think we've been going 3 hours and 30 minutes or something like that.
Yeah. Okay, I'd say thank you to everyone, including the chat. I'm sorry we didn't look at you enough. We probably should have a bit more, but I think it's been really good. I've enjoyed this a lot. I hope to maybe see you guys again at some point, but I don't want to hog, the spotlight.
No, I'll get you back for another serious chat, and I'll definitely invite you back to an open house sometime.
Yeah, I'd like to just take part in a free-for-all.
Yeah, open house is open guest list and open topic, so it tends to go all over the place. It tends to be a lot of shit talking each other. And
Otterface and I do a stream as well where we invite on feminists from time to time. Like I said, we had Chris Yosti and ContraPoints.
And can I?
Why don't when we invite on Tim, Demotivate Our Opinions, why don't you come on with him then to our show?
Don't do it. Don't do it.
Shut up. The show that Otter and I do. Like, why don't you come on with Tim?
So are you inviting me to come on with you when you do a stream soon?
Yes.
You and Otter.
We're planning, yes, me and Otterface do a stream every single week, and occasionally we invite feminists onto the stream. Why don't you come on next time we do it with Tim, since you get on with Tim?
Yeah, I've talked to. I haven't done a stream with him yet, but by the time that we probably go on, I probably will have. So yeah, look, I'd love to do that, and just in general, look, anyone watching, and to both of you guys, if you need someone who's a bit more centrist, because you can tell I really work hard at it, and it gets annoying, I'm sure. But if you need someone to sort of balance things out, in any kind of guest list, I'm happy. I'm happy to help.
I should get you on with Little Miss Anonymous sometimes, because she's an egalitarian and likes to take the middle ground as well.
Sure.
I do a hangout with her and Russian Deadpool, so it's an MRA, a feminist, and an egalitarian.
Okay.
And those two get drunk, and it goes for about 5 hours. So.
Okay. Atheist. He's pretty centrist as well. He's a really nice guy, and he tries to kind of stay on the middle ground as well. I think you'd get on with him.
Cool, but it's also I like to sort of be around the, dare I say, the reasonable extremists, if that's not a total oxymoron, and try and see what can be done to try and hone their ideas as well as depolarize them. But again, I think we should wrap this up. I think it's been great. I think everything that really needed to be said has been said. I've had a lot of fun. I hope everyone else has. And unless there's any final words, I think we should wrap it up.
No, thanks. Thanks for asking to do this, and thanks for being open-minded and asking questions and listening. And
does anybody mind if I read the complete works of Shakespeare before we go?
Well, no, that's fine. I love Shakespeare.
Dedicate the next 6 hours to that. So,
can
you do it in 6 hours?
Yeah, really fun.
Maybe Otterface could.
I was thinking that. She does talk extremely fast.
Okay. All right. Hit me up on Twitter if you want to get in contact about a stream, Silhouette Guy. I've forgotten your name. What is it exactly? Mr. Silhouette? There we go. All right.
Say goodbye, guys.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for